till I get the job done. Club member, may never be president, but when I lay down my head at night, I take pride in what I do.
Good morning, and welcome to another episode of the Leadership Insights podcast, brought to you by Evans Leadership Insight Group. Today, we have a special guest, a good friend of mine, Thomas. Thomas is a Navy veteran, had some deployments with the Navy SEALs, and so this is our Veterans Day episode. I know it's a few days after Veterans Day, but I thought it was an appropriate time to bring him on and talk about his experiences, and we will tie in some leadership things. But basically, we're going to let Tom tell his story about how he got to go play with the SEALs, and then how he ended up here and back here. He was originally from Texas. How he ended up back here in North Central Texas. So, Tom, thanks for being on. And man, the microphone's yours. So just go ahead and tell it like it is.
Okay. Well, to skip in the end, the reason I ended up back in Texas is because I had to come back and defend the Republic. In case we separate from the Union, I got to be here for when it happens. So anyways, going back to the beginning.
Yeah, we're on the flight path. It's going to add to it when we get to your war stories. We'll have fighters fly over. We'll have planes fly over. So it really adds to the ambiance of war stories.
So the problem is in the headset, I can't tell if that's real or fake. So I thought you were doing that intentionally. I was like,
Oh, it was. I called the airport and told them to fly. Have to fly over this
Are we
morning.
going to get a flyby of a couple Kiowas or a freaking Black Hawk or something to make it realistic?
No Black Hawks, but probably some F-35s and some F-18s will fly over.
Okay. All right. So similar to how we discussed before the show started, I'll kind of summarize everything real quick and how I found myself in Naval Special Warfare. And so didn't know what I wanted to do post high school. Totally clueless that people were putting in college applications. Decided I didn't want to go anyways because I couldn't stand school. But I'd had a full time job since the summer between my 8th and ninth grade. So as most men can imagine, I was a 16, 17, 18-year-old in high school, had lots of money, very little bills, and zero responsibilities. So I found myself in trouble. That's where I found myself. Lot of trouble. So if there's one smart thing I've done in my entire damn life, it was I made the decision. I was like, well, I can't stay here because the path I'm on, I'm either going to end up dead or I'm going to end up in jail, jail again, very soon. And I don't want to go to college because I can't think of anything I would want to go to school to learn to do. So I joined the military, and I went down. I didn't join the Navy out of any sense of duty. I found out later that I had like multi-generational people in the Navy. So I guess it's just fate that landed me there, even though the Marine Corps was the most persistent recruiter. Holy crap. Like a Marine Corps recruiter can put a scam artist to shame and how persistent they can be. But anyways, so I joined the Navy pre 9/11. It was 2001, but it was in June. So went to boot camp, and I quickly found out that before I even finished my initial schooling for what I joined the military to be, it was a ANSPY 1 Bravo Victor radar technician, Aegis radar. I didn't even get through the schooling, and I was like, this is going to be the most boring damn thing in the world. And I was trying to get out of it. Like I was actively calling the EOD recruiter while I was still in my A school or my C school. Sorry, my C school. I was calling the EOD recruiter trying to get him to screen me. And finally, my recruiter just put the kibosh on it. He was just like, dude, you signed up for this crap. You're going to have to go to your first unit. You got to do a minimum of 2 years on your first tour before you're even eligible to cross rate. End of story. So that's what I did. But true to my word, almost to the week exactly when I was eligible, I put in the paperwork to cross rate. The way it works in the Navy is in order to cross rate, you have to be in an overmanned rating, and you have to select 3 undermanned ratings or MOSs for everyone else in the military. So I chose corpsman, construction electrician, which is a CB, the construction battalions, and a cryptologic technician collection, so CTR. And by luck of fate, I got picked up as a CTR. The irony being that the CTRs on my ship that I was on told me I was going to hate it even more than what I was already doing. And it turns out they were correct. I got to my first tour, and if I thought the boredom with my previous job was extreme, this took boredom to an insane level. So much so that I volunteered for a couple deployments. Eventually landing myself on what at the time they were calling the individual augmentees. So it was all the units that were going over to the Middle East that they would put out an individual augmentee request and go. So there was a recruiting flyer that got emailed around, and everybody was like, "Hey, there's these special forces guys that are going to be coming through to do a recruiting thing." And I didn't even get past the email. I saw the flyer and I saw the picture of the dude with the helmet and the night vision and the body armor, the guns and the camouflage, and I was like, "Yep, yeah, that's what I'm doing." I was like, I'm getting the hell out of here. This is so boring. I'm going to go do that." And I made the decision right then. I was like, "That's come hell or high water. That's what I'm going to do." And I found out later that I kind of got not tricked, but when I talked to the people running the screening back then, they were like, "Hey, well, we got this message coming out for augmentees for an upcoming rotation." They're like, "Why don't you get on that? And you can kind of give it a test drive." I found out quite a while later that basically they were like, "Hey, how about we take this guy for a test drive, and like we'll take him on deployment, and if he's a turd, we'll never talk to him again. But if he's okay, we'll try to screen him and see if he can pass the screening and join the program." And that's basically exactly what happened. I went on an augmentee to Camp Fallujah, Iraq.
You know, thinking about this conversations we've had, we always have kind of talked about your time when you were in naval special warfare. So can you just kind of talk about Fallujah a little bit before because I don't think I've ever heard that story. I mean, it may not be
Yeah.
super exciting, but
No, not really. So the augmentee requests that they put out were all for like support personnel. So I was going over there as a signals intelligence analyst. They put you through a bunch of pre-deployment training. You go up to the National Security Agency. You go through their little training program they stood up. I don't remember how long it was. It was quite a few weeks. I got quite a few Marriott reward points out of that. That was pretty sweet. And then you go over and you're a signals intelligence analyst. So that was my role. As all the people who've been in the military that are familiar with the skiffs, like I sat in the room with no windows. I sat in the room, the room within the room that has no freaking windows, and you sit there under the fluorescent light behind your computers, leveraging all the national databases to help target bad guys for the SEAL. Uh, so that's what I did. Very, very unexciting, except it was my initial exposure to NSW. So like I would go over and I would work with the actual intel people from the SEAL team. So I was at the flagpole. I was sitting at the flagpole, but we were all in one big camp. So the flagpole was on this side of the camp, and the actual operators and SEAL team was on that side of the camp. But I would walk over there. I would walk over there and give them all my intel and work with their intel people. And then when they would detain said bad guy that we were after, they would bring him back, and I would be there to help and do the post mission like SSE on all the electronics and stuff. So that was like my first exposure to what all my the guy with the SEAL team that the kind of person that I would ultimately become. That was my first introduction to those guys when I met them there.
Right.
Yeah. Very unexciting. Never left Camp Fallujah, was at the flagpole, worked in a skiff, very, very unexciting.
So when were you in Fallujah?
Good Lord. That would have been 2007.
Okay. Yeah. So it was after, because I think it was like 2004, 2003, 2004.
That was the initial invasion. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
there was the big battle of Fallujah. I think was
Correct. I think that was
like end of 3 or
I think-
beginning 4. It was like right as because I was in Iraq from 2003 to 2004, and it was kind of right as we were leaving.
Yeah. You're talking about when George Bush gave the orders to like take the city, and the Marines went in and like street by freaking street, like straight up Way City style.
They did that, and
Took
then
the city.
And then when the Marines left,
Yeah.
and the 82nd Airborne took over,
Yeah, that was
then there was 2 big battles of Fallujah.
That was 2005, I think.
Yeah, okay.
I'm pretty sure.
So, like I said, it was right as I was transitioning out of Iraq. So I just wondered if we were shared some of the same ground at the same time. I hadn't asked you that before. So,
Well, not unless you were not unless you were making your way around Camp Fallujah.
well, when I was there, we did personal security for the CPA ambassadors. So I was all over. I was stationed in Baghdad.
Okay.
I was a medic with an MP company, but we had our big principal at the time was Paul Brimmer, which was the CPA administrator, and then anybody that came in to Iraq when we were there. So congressional delegations, all the cabinet secretaries. We were remotely involved when President Bush came forward Thanksgiving in 2003. So we were all over. We went.
Was that when he declared victory?
No, he had declared victory before
Yeah.
we ever went.
Sorry, it wasn't victory. It was mission complete.
Mission complete.
Mission
accomplished. So anyway, I wondered. So you come back from Fallujah, and now you're now they said, oh, this guy's not a dirtbag, and maybe we should let him come play with us.
Yeah, so I got back, and the guys that like I said, the counterparts that I would ultimately become helped coordinate my initial screening. So I went out there to San Diego and went through the screening process. And the funny part was, so just because I know some of my teammates may see this, so if I don't air out all my dirty laundry, I'm gonna get a lot of text messages. So I failed the initial screening. I passed the swim, the push-ups, pull-ups, and everything, but I think I missed the run. I can't remember. I missed the run by like more than a minute. I was going so slow. It was so sad. So they sent me back to my unit, but then they told me if I could get the dive motivator, the SEAL dive motivator, to come, because all the screening was the SEAL PST. It was the SEAL PST was what we did. It's advanced so much further than that now, but back in the day, that's what it was. So they told me if I could get the SEAL dive motivator for the region where I was at to come administer a PST, and I could pass it, then they would take me. So that's what I did. I went home, and like less than a month later, I got the SEAL dive motivator to come administer the PST, and I passed everything. Did great. I just chalked up me failing the screening to basically just nerves. Like I was a nervous wreck the night before the screening. Like I was so freaking nervous. And I got up the next morning, and I ate the breakfast of champions, McDonald's and a Monster.
So that gets you ready for a PT test.
I ate a McDonald's breakfast, and I had a blue Monster. Not even the sugar-free kind. I had the full strength, full sugar blue Monster or whatever.
Well, that should have made you run faster, buddy.
Well, that's probably why I did. Astonishingly, see, this is going to end up taking forever because now we keep going down rabbit holes. Astonishingly, I passed the swim, and the guy that was administering it, he told me, he was like, I don't for the life of me know how you passed the swim. He's like, because you went through the water like a buoy. He's like, you never put your head down. He's like, you went through the water like this. And he's like, but out of sheer freaking willpower, you passed the swim. And I was like, no, it wasn't willpower. I was raging on a monster. But it, like that kind of rush is, as soon as it wore off, I went off a cliff.
Right. So it crashed. You had to crash by the runtime up.
Well, that's the excuse I'm making. All the guys are going to be like, he's just making excuses.
He's just slow.
No, I was slow, dude. I showed up and I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like back in the day, we were watching, there was some SEAL on YouTube way back then. It was like the only videos that you could find anywhere where somebody was showing you how to do the combat side stroke. So I used to have my laptop at the swimming pool, and I would look at the video and be like, what's this dummy doing? Like, okay. And then I would get in the water and try and emulate it. That was it. That was all I was doing. So I showed up and was like, okay, well, I've got some YouTube instructions on how to swim, and every idiot knows how to run, and do push-ups and pull-ups. So yeah, I think I got this. And I totally freaking screwed it. But the point is, I went home. I was properly hydrated, properly fueled, got, round 2. I had the nerves, the jitters were gone. I had home turf advantage.
Yeah. Slept in your own bed. I think that's
yeah. I was literally I did the swim in the pool
that you've been swimming.
The same freaking pool that I had been practicing in was where I did the swim. So I nailed it.
I think that talks about some things that, when we talk about resilience, a lot of people would have gone and failed. And I think just as where we are in your part of the story, you had the tenacity that you knew that maybe you didn't know that where you were going to end up and what you wanted, but you knew you didn't want to be where you were, whether it was leaving high school, joining the Navy, going from a radar tech to an intel guy, going from, an intel guy on a support mission to the Naval Special Warfare, to include getting into it to pass that test. You knew you didn't want to be where you were. So you took the initiative. You called the recruiters, and you could have, the first time you're recruiter for EOD said, "Hey, buddy, you gotta stick to this. You gotta
He
do this."
basically just told me to leave him alone.
Oh,
He was like, dude, it was my recruiter. It was my recruiter was the one that was told me like, no, dude, you signed up for this.
and you know,
You're gonna go give us what you signed up for, and then you can go do whatever the
and
hell
you
you want.
you could have
I
done
was like, okay.
2 years or whatever, and been like, man, this sucks, and I'll just get out of the Navy, because
Mhm.
it was probably what 2 years out of a 4-year contract. Were you on a 4-year?
No, because of the extensive schooling I went through, it was 6.
Okay,
You
so
sign up for a 6-year contract,
Got-
so I
okay.
still have 4 to go.
Oh, okay, gotcha. I was gonna say, because
Which otherwise, you're correct. If I would have signed up for a 4-year contract,
you would have been like,
dude, I would have been like, I'm done. I'm like, I'm gonna go home and be a cop or something. Like, this is stupid.
so then
Yeah.
then you had to coordinate to get the SEAL dive motivator to come. It wasn't like, hey, well, next month we're going to send Johnny over to administer the PT test. You had to show that you wanted to be there, that you wanted to, to do those things. So I think that's an important thing to just take a minute to recognize is, we don't get to places in life waiting for other people to do it for us. You gotta go out there and say, this is, I don't like where I'm at. I don't necessarily, because how often do too many of us probably all have a time in our life where we know we aren't where we want to be, but we don't know where we want to go. And so we just stay there because we're paralyzed because there's too many options or
It's
there's
routine.
and it's safe.
It's safe. It's
safe.
routine.
And so you took,
Uh-huh.
so I just want to just take a moment to celebrate that because that's an
Most
important
people get so comfortable in their routine and the safety and comfort of the routine that they're like, yeah, I know this sucks and I know I don't like doing it, but it's safe and I know.
paycheck or whatever it may be.
Well, and it's also not hard because what's more difficult and terrifying than like striking out on an entirely new uncharted path?
Yeah.
It's freaking terrifying.
And like, just, and again, not to make fun of you about it, but you struck out on a new path and failed.
Yeah.
The first, I mean, you did, and again, this is a thing of resilience. If you struck out and failed, you could have very easily gone back to your home base and been like, well, I tried it, boys, and I just failed that damn run. And
that motivation I had when I saw that email with the flyer,
you're like,
I was like, I don't give a crap if I have to take this screening test 100 times. I am going.
They're going to let me in one way or another.
Yeah.
So
whether they like it or not, I'm coming.
So anyway, I just wanted to take a moment to really celebrate that because I do think that's important. So now you've passed the test. You're going to be a part of Naval Special Warfare.
Am I the only one that can hear that train?
No.
Okay.
It's coming around the bend.
I just want to make sure I wasn't like, this isn't in my head, right? I'm like, all right.
Train's on the tracks. You better get moving.
Well, all right. So once again, I got to air my dirty laundry or the guys are going to give me a lot of crap. This is another part of the story that I actually don't know if anyone in my family knows this. My mom might know this. But anyways, to get the whole story of my NSW career started, we got to tell it. We got to tell how it started. I showed up at my unit in San Diego, and 4 days later, I got a DUI on base. Yeah. I got a DUI on Coronado Amphibious Base in California. So I met my entire leadership structure during my non-judicial punishment process.
Hi, I'm Tom. By the way, I just got a DUI and I'm going to be part of your unit.
Right. So it's like, it's hilarious. You show up, you go to meet with all the chiefs because that's the first thing you do is basically you go get your ass reamed by the chiefs. The E7 and above for those who aren't Navy. So the senior enlisted, you go in there and the first thing you do is it's what it's supposed to be as a fact finding thing. Like the chiefs are going to be like, okay, like what the hell happened? Like, let's get the facts straight. I marched in there and I found out later that all the chiefs were like, wait, who are we? Who is this? And everybody was like, oh, he got here 4 days ago. And they're like, wait, what? He hasn't even been here a week. It's like,
he's just out of in processing.
Yeah, I hadn't even fully checked in. My check-in sheet wasn't even fully signed off. I got a DUI. I did luckily it was on base. So there was no involvement with the civil authorities in California because, wow, you don't want to do that. So I had my base driving privileges were revoked. So for like a year, I had to park off base and literally walk in. Because I couldn't drive on base. They took my decals away. yeah. But again, if that was the least of what I had to deal with, or that's the most I had to deal with, like who cares? But everybody that knows me, everybody knows me in the program, and everybody knows me from the military or whatever. They all know that like my origin story is the most hysterical thing ever. Because I showed up and I was like, and I went out the first Friday that I was there with a bunch of the guys from the unit, and they all went home. They actually all crashed at one guy's pad in town, and I was the only moron that was like, "Well, I'm going to get my car and go back to the barracks on base," and that's what I did, and I got busted. So, anyways, I had to serve out, my punishment while going through all my initial like professional development training and like that, which it was just a nightmare. Like my first year at the unit was a total disaster reputationally, on my personal life, because I was married with a kid at the time. Just epic disaster to start my career. But you know what they say, if you hit rock bottom, you got nowhere to go but up.
Yeah, and I think I would say that knowing how the military works in the especially the NCO Corps, it doesn't matter if you're Army, Navy, Air Force, any of the branches, that Corps, they also, I think they look at people and they say, okay, this guy's got potential, so yeah, he screwed up.
Let me tell you another part of it, because it'll come back later. And it's the irony. Once again, the irony is palpable. So the final thing you do in the Navy, in JP, you go to Captain's Mast. You go to see the old man. And when you go to see the old man, you've got your commander, whoever's the officer in charge of you. It's basically just you and him. You walk into the captain's office or wherever the mast is being held. You walk in. In my case, he held the mast in his office. So we're standing out in the hallway, and the commander, which by the way, I met that morning, he was like, "Hey, I'm your commander. Let's go to your captain's mast." So we're standing out in the hallway, and he goes, "Hey, no matter what's said in there," and he's like, "don't take it personal, yada, yada, yada." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And I thought he was preparing me for the ass chewing that I was about to get from an '05 SEAL commanding officer, which I totally thought was coming. I thought I was about to get the ass chewing that would, be of like biblical proportions. Instead, what happened was we walked in, and my commander, he came in and gave the recommendation that we dismiss me from the unit. And I was like, "Oh, that caught me off guard." I was like, "That caught me off guard." I was like, "I wasn't expecting that." I thought he was preparing me for the ass chewing that he was about to give me, not the fact that he was about to tell me we need to get rid of this piece of crap. For reasons that no one can explain, the commanding officer was like, "Nah, I think we'll keep him. Like, we'll keep him." And I don't remember what else he said, but he was like, "No, I think we'll keep him. We'll just give him the, we'll give him the max punishment, extra duty, half pay times two, blah, 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 run it,
Restriction.
because you can't really,
Okay,
like,
well,
you can't
yeah.
restrict me to the barrack rate, suspended, as long as I didn't F up for a certain period of time. The reduction in rate was suspended. So he didn't bust me down. I just got extra duty and half month's pay times two. Yeah. So that's what I got from the commanding officer. So the commanding officer overrode my commander. So we walk out in the hallway afterwards, and I'm looking at him like, "What the hell was that?" And I didn't say anything. Hell no. I was scared. I was scared to death. I didn't say anything. I was just like, "Oh, take your," that was basically the end of my day. I went home, got out of uniform, and basically was just processing how much I had just effed up royally at that point. Anyways, had to tell all that, because if any of my buddies hear this, they're going to be like, "Yo, oh, he left out."
But I think that it's just, again, this is kind of showing that A, you had potential, and B, that this was a path or calling that you were on.
Something kept me off. Something made the commanding officer say, let's keep this POS around and see what he's made of," or whatever. I like to think he made a great decision,
Well,
but obviously I'm biased.
what point in time with that? How many years had you been in the Navy at that point in time?
6 years.
And then how many years did you end up before at retirement?
22.
So I think he made it right.
Like,
I think he
yeah.
made the right decision.
Yeah,
I think the Navy got its worth out of you. by that
I
decision.
ended up doing about 22 years. I think it was 22 years and like 3 months or something like that.
Gotcha.
Some crap like that. I don't know.
Okay, so you've gotten to your professional development. You've gotten through restriction, or
Oh yeah, now's when the fun begins. That was like 7 days into my reporting.
so now you're rocking and rolling. You've gotten through your training.
Yep. I went through all the pro dev courses, which back then it was just like, I don't want to say we didn't know what we were doing. We had the best among us, which was the original core cadre of guys. We're like, hey, I went on deployment and I learned a lot of lessons the really hard way.
Right.
And they came back and they found training courses to get guys prepared so that they didn't have to go through that crap the hard way. That's basically how we did it back then. So those group of guys were like, you're going to go to this course, you're going to go to this course, you're going to go to this course, this course, this course, this course, so on and so on and so on and so on and so on, because it's going to teach you all the crap that you need to know so that you don't have to figure it out the freaking hard way, sitting in a unair conditioned tent with a dirt floor and an operator's manual on top of a piece of equipment that you've never even turned on, because that's what those guys did back then. So they did everything they could do to be like, I'm going to make sure you don't end up in that situation.
I think that's
Yeah.
and learning lessons the hard way, that those guys knew, and probably they were lucky if they were in a tent on a dirt floor trying to figure it out and they weren't
Some of them were doing it on the fly in a freaking Humvee.
getting shot at.
Yeah, they're like, oh, let me flip this thing on and figure out what it does. Like they were doing it the hard way. And they learned I guess I should ask them if I should say their names or not. I don't know. A lot of them are retired now. I mean, well, okay, all of them are retired because they were there before I got there.
Right.
So they're older than me. They're all retired now, but those guys learned a lot of hard lessons, and they came back and did the best they could to get every new crop of dudes trained up with the knowledge that they thought they needed in order to be successful. So that's what we did. And the crappy part is how that ultimately culminated was I ended up being gone away from home more during the workup cycle for the deployment than I was for the actual damn deployment. Because you'd go do 5 weeks on a SIGINT operators course somewhere out on the East Coast, and then you would come back and you'd go do land warfare with your SEAL team out in the desert, and then you would go do another 3-week course here, and then you go do SALC out on St. Clemente Island, and then you go do this, and 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 you get through all that just so you could be like, okay, now it's time to go on deployment, honey. I'll see you in, 7 months or something like that. Well, back then they were doing 6, they were doing like 6-month rotations with flights in, flights out, and transit. And it ended up being closer to like 7 months, give or take. And we were so minimally staffed. Back then that we used to tell guys when we recruited them that we would literally high five on the tarmac. But that's not the truth. We actually didn't see each other. Like it wasn't like their plane landed and he walked off and I was walking on and we'd high five and I'd get on the plane and go. It's like, no, we passed each other or going over the Atlantic. Like he was on a plane coming home. My first deployment when I got there, my turnover was the Toughbook laptop that came with the gear I got. It had a 1-page Word doc on the desktop, said read me. Like that was my turnover. He basically wrote a detailed journal of being like, here's everything you need to know. And by the way, here's also where I put the equipment. Here's the combination to the padlock. Like, that was my turnover. We passed each other in the air. We didn't even see each other. So it was hilarious that you'd come home from deployment and there'd be a face there that you didn't recognize. And you'd be like, hey, who's the new guy? And he was like, who are you calling a new guy? I've been here since, and it turns out he's been there longer than you, but you've never met. Like you just never met. So it was like, it went on like that for years. Where every time you'd come home from deployment, you would meet new faces that had been there just as long or longer than you, but you didn't even know who the hell they were.
New old faces.
Yeah.
So you did, with the special warfare, did you do all your deployments into the Afghanistan theater, or did you do any?
In the beginning, when I was with what they call theater soft, the white side guys, yeah, all my deployments were to declared theaters of combat.
Okay.
So Iraq, Afghanistan, crap like that. Actually, all mine were to Afghanistan.
Okay.
So all of my combat deployments were Afghanistan.
So other than your initial to Fallujah, everything else was pretty much.
I never went back to Iraq after that first trip to Fallujah as a signals intelligence analyst. I never went back to Iraq.
Okay.
Yeah. And again, it's there's really no rhyme or reason to it. It's just a toss of a coin on who goes where. You get chopped over to the SEAL team and they just put names on a spreadsheet, and that's who you find out what platoon you're getting assigned to. I don't even remember on my first deployment when I found out I was going to Afghanistan. It was like well into it. It was like well into like me chopped over to the SEAL team, where one day I was just like, hey, by the way, where are we going? They were like, oh, we're going to, blah, 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 Arghandab Valley, Afghanistan. And I was like, okay, cool. Got it. So it's just a toss of a coin that I ended up going, all my combat deployments were all in the same country.
So just a little bit of background, and we'll jump into some of your deployments, or a little bit more background. So as a medic, you can be assigned to any. I was a medic, so you can be assigned to any kind, any unit. You're typically assigned to a battalion, and you deploy with them, but you can augment or do whatever. Were you assigned? Were you always assigned to the same SEAL team, or were you just assigned? I know you worked out of Virginia Beach, or the SEAL teams.
Well, in the beginning, I was at San Diego.
Okay.
In Coronado.
So what? But
no. So once again, there were so few of us that
were needs of the Navy.
I mean, in the beginning, we would have guys that would go on deployment, come home, and go back on deployment before the original SEAL team they went with were back on deployment. Okay. So you'd go out with one would come back, 3 would go out, then you'd go out with 5, and then like 5 would come back, and 7, and so you ended up meeting like all of the SEAL teams, all of them, because there was less of us than there was of them. So guys would just like. So back to Coronado, like, so I went out on my first deployment. I came home. I was only home for 4 months, and I went back for a year. I was only home for 4 months. I turned around, and went back for a year, and it was with an entirely different SEAL team that I'd never met. And the irony of that one was, at least the first SEAL team, I went through all the pre-workup with them. The next SEAL team, I met them when they were loading out their pallets for the airplane to go on deployment. Like, just imagine this. Imagine you're a bunch of SEALs. You just went through an 18-month workup cycle for a deployment, and then you're out there loading up the pallets and the weapons ISU or whatever, and all of a sudden a pickup truck backs up with some freaking nerd. 3 of us, actually. There were 3 of us. A pickup truck backs up with all these Pelican cases and everything, and it was all our SIGINT gear. And you back up, and you're like, hey, where do I put my stuff? And they're looking at you like, who the F? Like, what do you like? It was not a warm welcome. They were like, who are you? And why are you taking up so much space on our freaking pallets with all this bullshit gear that we don't even know what it does? And I'm like, that was my introduction to my second SEAL team. It was like, it was rough. It was a rough start.
So let's get into deployment stories, because this is all
fun.
Believe me, to me, it's all interesting. If you're a military guy, inside baseball, if you will, of all that stuff is really cool. But
the comedy
and the comedy. But I know a lot of people, they want to hear the
actual point of this conversation.
Well, I mean, you're talking SEALs, so we want to hear about blowing shit up and shooting people and.
Yeah. You're like, oh,
raids
combat deployments. Like, oh, okay.
What most people, that have been through combat know that
at some point the bullets start flying.
At some point they do. But for most of, it may be different in special operations. Generally, combat is extreme boredom broken up. Periods of extreme boredom broken up by periods of sheer terror.
Intense
and sheer terror. It doesn't matter who you are, what you've been through.
It's basically what it. Yeah.
It really doesn't. I mean, you can.
It was periods of extreme boredom,
and then
working out, reading,
getting into stupid
wash,
trouble,
rinse, repeat.
Getting into stupid trouble, and then all of a sudden you go on a mission.
And then mission.
And then, a lot of times missions, even, I mean, I know, again, I was doing different stuff than what you guys are, but, most of our missions is we did personal security. So we'd get in a truck and we'd follow a Suburban that had an ambassador.
But you're doing that in Iraq.
When we were doing that in Iraq.
That's a whole different.
And when we were there, it was pretty mellow. And when I was there, it was pretty mellow. But
well, you can thank the Marines for that.
Yeah.
Like, we could do a whole other discussion on just what they did in Fallujah. It was incredible.
Yeah. So we but then then there was those days where I mean, I was there 3 days and they blew up the Palestine Hotel, which was the headquarters for the UN at the time.
Oh, I was going to say, I thought that might have been where the provincial authority was.
No, the provincial authority was in the center of the green zone. That's where we lived.
Okay.
We lived in a bombed out Iraqi special forces barracks that was right across from Saddam's Forehead Palace.
Yeah.
But so I got there.
I never got to go to the green zone.
Didn't miss anything. So we were there, and I mean, I've been there. I got there. My buddy had been the senior medic. My data rank was like 2 months before his, and so I walked in. as a replacement. We had a guy who had some medical issues. I walked in and he literally was like, "Hey, you're the senior medic now. I'm going on mission." And he walked off. He's like, "Oh, by the way,
Yeah.
you have platoon sergeant meeting. We have a meeting with platoon sergeants in like 2 hours." And one of the medics is on is going to for non-judicial punishment. You need to take him in there. I'm like,
Oh,
"What's going on? I don't know anything." So I was like, and then 3 days later,
you're like, holy crap.
the Palestine hotel got blown up, and
Yeah.
I'm in there. It was me and a couple MPs, and we're in this big field, and stuff's still on fire, and there's no cover and concealment. We got all these Iraqi high rises behind us where they're they had definitely had good sniper perches, and I'm like, why are we just sitting in this field and nobody's doing anything? And in the moment you don't necessarily feel the sheer terror, but as soon as you come home, I was like, well, that was stupid. And I had a bunch of those events where I would do something and we'd come back and
You look back on it, you're
I'd
like,
go,
wow, I can't believe we lived through that.
well, I can't, or I was just like, we were it was right before we got ready to come home. I don't want to steal all your war stories, but I was right before we got ready to go home. And we were on Route Irish, so we were going between Baghdad and which is the Baghdad International Airport, and that was like the most dangerous road in the world. Traffic stopped, and we're in this convoy, and we were taking our replacements to set up their logistics trail. Well, they were supposed to be our replacements, but they had gotten fired. So they were a mechanized field artillery unit from the National Guard. They sent them to a 3-week course to become corrections MPs.
Okay.
And they were supposed to go to Abu Ghraib, but they decided, well, no, we need them to do PSD. So these guys had no clue. And so like day one, they're on a mission. And
they're basically just soldiers with guns. But
yeah. So day one, we're doing with
zero PSD training.
Yeah. They're doing a mission, and homeboy's up in the turret of a Humvee. He's on a saw. He's got it off safe, fingers on the trigger, and they do a hard stop.
Oops.
And so he dumps about 30 rounds into downtown Baghdad.
Whoopsie.
So that was number one. Number two, I was involved in. We're getting on patrol, and there's a hard stop, and they're not used to driving up armored Humvees, which are heavier, have a longer.
Big time. Yeah.
So they were in the vehicle I'm in.
Oh. Whoops.
Yeah, that's why I got back and neck injuries. Thank you. And so that was strike two. And then 2 days later, so when you're with the ambassadors, a lot of what they do were dinners, and they would go out. We'd be in downtown Baghdad at night. They lost an M9 pistol in downtown Baghdad at night. So the next day, they were told that they were packing up and going to the Syrian border. Like they got fired. And so, but we still had to set up their we still had to set up their logistics train. So we're going up Route Irish, and everything stops. My buddy's in the lead vehicle. He's a young MP sergeant. We're getting ready to leave Iraq, and this is the first mission he gets to lead, right? So they stop, and they come running over because we're in vehicles with MP markers on them. And so they run up to him, and they're like, there's an IED on this side of the road behind you. There's an IED on that side of the road in front of you. And they're taking small arms fire over there. We need to get everybody off the highway, basically onto the frontage road, to get to box around this kill zone. So he's super excited because he gets to lead a mission, right? He's an MP. We got maybe 3 weeks left in country, and he's on this mission. So he's super excited. Well, we have, besides him, 2 other MPs with us. The rest of them are like supply and the headquarters from this National Guard unit have no idea what to do. And so he's like, all right, Dan, what I want you to do is I want you to go up there and stop the southbound traffic because I got to cut the northbound traffic across. We were on like a divided highway. And I'm sure in Afghanistan it was the same way. And in Iraq, if you had like a interstate type highway, lanes were a suggestion. So if it was 3 lanes,
that's the entire Middle East and Africa.
So if it was a 3-lane with shoulders, you're probably looking at 5 lanes of traffic coming at you.
Yeah.
And so here I am, and I jump out. And so because I was a medic, if we were on headquarters missions, I only had an M9 because they didn't have enough by MTO to issue us a full combat load to go out with an M4. Now, if I went on missions with the MP platoon as a medic, I always rode with the squad leader, and the squad leader in MP company or an MP platoon has either a shotgun and an M4 assigned to him. So I'm like, whichever one of those you don't want to carry, I'm taking. But anyway, so I'm out here with my little M9 full kit, and I'm facing 5 lanes of traffic, all semis. And I step out of the truck, step into the middle of the road, put my little fist up, and like, stop.
Yeah. Yeah.
They all stop.
Yeah.
Well, as part of that, there was a bus of Iranian pilgrims going to some Shiite mosque. And so the next thing I know, and I'm trying, they want to know why we're stopping, and I don't speak Farsi, I don't speak
Arabic,
any kind of Arabic, and I'm like, get back in the bus, get back in the bus. And
well, remember, the rule is you just got to speak louder and wave your hands a lot. And
if you have anything with a laser, they'll
right.
Anyway,
you don't speak the language, just speak louder and wave your hands a lot. And
rack a shotgun, that always helps. But anyway, so I finally get him back in the truck, we get everything done, and I get back in my truck, and the gunner calls down on the radio, and she's like, I couldn't see you. Like, there was about 6 deep, you were surrounded by 6 deep by Iranians.
The people. Yeah.
She said, if something would have happened, you were on your own, because I would have had to mow down.
Yeah.
Just, so we get, so I'm like, hey, it's okay. And we get up to the camp, and we sit down and have lunch, and I'm sitting there eating, and I mean, it just hit me. I dropped my fork, and I looked at my buddy, and I was like, I ever do that again, you punch me square in the nuts. Cause I'm like, holy crap. I could have been wiped out. And it's like, well, if luckily there's a plan for me to be here today, otherwise that chance to have been snuffed out. And there was a couple other chances, that field in Baghdad, when they blew up the hotel, I mean, there was cars on fire. They had all around, and we could have easily been taken out there. Went to a couple other events there that I was like, they blew up the Al Rashid with a donkey powered MLRS, and we were in the building evacuating casualties. Could have easily come down on us, and just that kind of stuff. So anyway, there is a plan for us, and so those are my combat stories. But for the most part, we'd be on a truck, and we'd go wherever we would go, set up security. Ambassadors would go in, do what they need to do, and we had great stories of things we saw and happened, and funny stuff. But combat was not. The majority of the time, combat's not scary, but then you have
you weren't going out looking for a fight, but occasionally you got in the middle of one.
Occasionally one came to you.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
So now you've gone through all your training. You're in San Diego. You have done you're getting ready to do your workup to deploy to your first time to Afghanistan. So take it from there, brother.
So to back up a smidge, when I did my initial workup deployment, I think the hardest thing I did was, they called it Mount back in the day, and then they changed it to SALC, so Special Operations and Urban Combat. I went and did that with my first SEAL Team 3, and man, it was rough. Like, I mean, it's just exhausting. They run you into the ground, intentional. And they told us afterwards. The reason I'm backing up a little bit is because when it was all over with, we got the debrief by the SEAL commander that was running TRADET at the time. Everybody was treating this guy with a certain amount of reverence, and I didn't know why. I was like, who is this guy, and why is everyone acting so funny around him? It wasn't until years later that I found out it was Jocko Willink, and that the reason he was running TRADET is because of his famous story of Ramadi and what he went through. Who better to put in charge of TRADET than Jocko?
Yeah.
So all the torture that we were going through, training, the scenarios we were going through, he did that intentionally. And he told us that one of the reasons you train so hard and you go through such intense scenarios is so that, I can't remember exactly how he said it, but to summarize it, he was saying, if we put you through the worst thing you've ever been through in your life, when it happens for real, it will override your base level lizard brain instincts, and you'll fall back on your training. So he goes, we put you through this, we intentionally exhausted you. You guys are sleep deprived. You're just worn out. And he told the regular guys, he's like, if you think what we did to you is rough, he's like, you should see what we did to your commanders, like the platoon chief and the platoon commander. He's like, we ran those guys into the ground. He's like, because when the shit hits the fan, we don't want them to break down and be like, oh, what do I do? They're going to fall back on like, oh, I've been here. I've been this tired before. I've been this worn out. The combat activity around me, the fog of war has been so thick and so intense that I've been here before. I know what to do. And you fall back on your training. It wasn't until years later that I found out that was Jocko Willink. And I was like, that makes total sense. I was like, okay. So I did all that. I did all that training, and I go on. So I go on my first deployment. Just getting to where we were going. Anybody that's been over there and understands like how crazy the logistics flow is of just moving people and goods around, you understand that like sometimes you just get stuck somewhere for days on end, waiting to get a free helicopter ride to where you're going. And so it took forever to get where we were going to our fob. But I was the last guy to get there. They put me on the last bird because again, our program and the guys at what we did were so new that the SEAL teams didn't know what we were and what our function was. They just knew that there was some non-SEAL that they were being told that was coming with them and they
And a
didn't know.
babysit
Yeah, pretty much.
in their eyes.
Oh yeah. I mean, like when you go through all your workup cycle training, you would go out, to do SALC, and the chief that was running the particular scenario, he would look at you and be like, "Who the hell are you, and why are you here?" And you're like, "Man, I don't know." He's like, "I don't know. I just got told to be here." And he's like, "Okay, good. Get in line. Do what the other guys do. Try not to get hurt, and don't hurt anybody." He's like, "If you hurt one of my guys," he's like, "I'll freaking beat you to death." I'm like, "Oh, okay, go, got it." So you get over there, and you're pretty much at the bottom of the priority pile. But then I get word I had to get multiple stops to get where I was going. And when I got to the last stop, I found out that my SEAL platoon was already there and they were pissed off because they were getting ready to go on their first mission, but they couldn't go until I got there. And then that's when they were like, "Why can we not go on a mission until this freaking loser gets here? Who is this idiot? And why can we not go until he gets here?" So I get there and it was not a warm welcome. They were like, "Where have you been?" And I'm like, "What do you mean, where have I been? Like, you act like I've been waiting to get an Enterprise rental car and drive here." I'm like, "Do you think I had any control over this?"
I was not staying at the Holiday Inn last night.
Yeah, what do you think I was doing? Like getting hot wings in Kandahar with the Canadians? Like what? So I get there and they're like, "Hey, okay, you're here. Okay, you're here. Go find an empty room to live in, unload your gear. And by the way, our first mission's in 3 days. Well, 2 days, period of darkness." And I was like, "Wow, okay." So I found an empty room in one of the outbuildings. It was basically just a plywood freaking hut,
Yeah.
just covered in dirt and rat turds. And I got in there, got it cleaned up, swept it out, put all my shit out, got all my gear out, got everything plugged in and charging, function checked all my equipment, and then boom, 2 days later, we're getting ready to roll. So we're doing, and I guess now we can get into the war stories. I go down there, and once again, another fantastic intro for me. I was like 5 minutes late to comms checks, and I didn't think it was that big a deal. And I got corrected very very quickly. Like when they say comm checks are at 2000 or whatever, like they mean
2000.
yeah. And if you're not there, as one of my last units I was with, they were like, "If you're not there 30 minutes early, you're 15 minutes late." I found out real quick. If they say comm checks are at 2000, you better be down there 30 minutes early, just waiting for the guy to come out and do the comms check instead of like rolling up at like 2 minutes after. "Hey, what are we doing?" Yeah, I got put in my place real quick. So we did comms checks. So now we're just sitting there waiting for the actual time to go down and load the birds. And I don't know. I don't know what I was thinking at that point. I was basically really nervous. I was just like, well, this is here, my first mission's coming up. I'm like, man, I just got my ass reamed for being, 2 to 5 minutes late to comms checks. I was like, I hope this isn't a sign of what's about to happen. But we go down, get on the birds. And again, I told people before, I'm like, it's basically like the movies, it's all blacked out. The helicopter, all the lights are off. It's total dark. You're on night vision. They close the doors and away we go. Wheels up and we're on our way. And if I remember right, I think the first mission I went on, it was like about a 45-minute helicopter ride to get where we were going. So we're riding along and I'm just crammed in this freaking bird. And of course I got in and got all the way to the back, right side, right by the door. And I'm just crammed in, trying not to take up too much space with all my shit that I'm bringing with me on the op. So we're flying along and then, again, just like people see in the movies, the crew chief turns around and he gives, like the 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute, 30 seconds, and all that whatnot. But this is kind of where the real point of this whole story begins was when I don't remember if it was at 5 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute. I don't remember. I just know that like at 5 minutes or 2 minutes, the doors flung open and we all swing our legs out. And now we're sitting on the side of this Black Hawk, totally blacked out on night vision, like whipping across the landscape, at God knows what speed. And you're just watching the ground fly by below. And that was when, to this day, I still don't know why. I don't know what overcame me. And I don't know why I did this. but I closed my eyes and I prayed to God for the first time in, I don't know, decades at that point. I don't remember the exact words that I said, but the gist of it was, and I think this is matters, because I didn't pray to God to be like, oh God, help me kill these, bad guys, or whatever. Oh, that's not, no. I was like, dear God, I'm like, be with us on this mission, help me do my job to the best of my abilities and bring us all home safe. He's like, I just want everybody to get home safe. And I was like, and because as I've said in one of the talks of the church, I viewed my job as defensive in nature. So to give context to everybody, I carried around a mobile radio direction finding system on my back. Because in Afghanistan, when you're out in the middle of nowhere, the bad guys use two-way radios, little VHF radios, to talk to each other. So I had a system on my back to where I could detect these guys and I could direction find them. And the whole goal was to, like, where are the bad guys? What are they saying? Are they trying to set up on us? What are they doing? So I kind of viewed my job as defensive in nature. And to the best of my ability, I wasn't always successful at this. To the best of my ability, I didn't try to kill anybody unless you tried to kill me first. If you didn't try to kill me first, I wasn't gonna kill you. Like, my job was basically to listen to the bad guys and talk to the LT and the platoon chief over the radio and be like, okay, we got guys over here. Here's what they're saying, so on and so forth. So I closed my eyes, did the prayer. 60 seconds later, or however long it was, wheels down, jump off, helicopter peels out, boom. I'm in the middle of nowhere in Afghanistan, in the mountains, somewhere near Arghandab Valley. And that's it. Like, you're in it for real this time. Like, no sim rounds, no RD sims. You're playing for points at this
Yeah.
point. Like, if somebody lobs some shit at you, it's not a 9-banger. It's for real. Like, it's a grenade or an RPG or AK or PKM or whatever. So first mission, fairly uneventful. We went out. I picked up the bad guys almost immediately. They heard the helicopter. I started relaying what they were doing, started direction finding them. But for the most part, they were staying away from us. They didn't engage. They were just lookouts, like pointing out where we were and where we were going and what we were doing, or what they thought we were doing. And we were there. Almost all of our missions were remain over day. So you would go out under cover of darkness. You'd be out all day long, and then you'd come back under cover of darkness again. So you were out over the entire day. So all day long, I just moved along with the element. And whenever we stopped to clear something or do whatever we were doing on that first mission, I would try to take up a high ground, so that I could get clear line of sight for all those radio nerds out there. I was trying to get clear line of sight so I could get a good line of bearing on the bad guys. First mission, very uneventful, but a couple missions later, I can't even keep them all. There were so many that I don't remember exactly what order they went in. We went out on another one. This one was fairly close to the fob, to where we actually drove. We drove to a set point, and then we got out and patrolled. Yeah, we dismounted and patrolled in from there, because there was no driving past a certain point. We were going right along so we were literally on what is essentially a goat path in the Arghandab River. And you had this narrow path, mountain, straight plummet down into the river. Like, if you rolled down that hill, there's no stopping. You're going down into the water. So you're on this little goat path. And we were on that it was less than 1,000 yards, but somewhere between 0 and 1,000 yards, we were on a little goat path where there's no escape. There's no cover. We've got a mountain on this side and a straight plummet to the river on this side. And you're totally exposed. But we get where we're going. The guys go down and immediately commence the assault, clearing. I take a high point with one of the Overwatch elements, where basically we took up cover on a hillside, and I'm sitting there and I'm doing my thing. And throughout the day, I start hearing them. I start getting lines of bearing, back the direction we came. And they're talking among the bad guys. Are like, hey, we know which way they came from. They came up the river, blah, 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 blah. Throughout the day, they were like, let's set up, because we know which way they're going to go when they leave.
Yeah, there's
So
only
they were
one way out.
there was one way in, one way out. So they were setting up to go to get us when we were in that little path where there's no escape. They were setting up to get us. I told LT, and everybody really hated me. In the beginning, everybody hated me. After it was over with, they didn't hate me, but nobody exactly came up and gave me a pat on the back. It was like, hey, thanks. It was just like, good job doing your job, dipshit. And I was like, thanks, guys. But I told the LT, I was like, hey, they're setting up on us back the way we came. They know which direction we came, and they're setting up to get us on the way out. So the LT made the call that, that mountain? He was like, we're going to go up and over that mountain. And everybody was like, oh my God. Because I'm not talking a Texas Hill Country hill. It was a freaking mountain. And LT was like, we're going to go up and over that mountain.
We're talking the Himalaya foothills. It's a little bit different than.
Like, you're sitting at the bottom of it and you just look straight up. And he was like, we're going to go up and over that. So we did.
Thanks, Tom.
Yeah. I remember one of the senior EOD guy, like on the way up the mountain, like about 3/4 of the way up, like he started getting back spasms. Because I mean, dude, these guys had been running and gunning all day in the Afghan heat. This was late summer. It was late summer. Afghan sun, running and gunning, basically on high alert all day. And then you're going to culminate your day with scaling a freaking mountain. So some of these dudes were rightfully like very dehydrated. The senior EOD guy started getting back spasms. His quad started locking up. Finally, we get over. It was miserable. It was a straight death march up this mountain. We get over the mountain. We come down the backside. I'm in like the 3rd fire team. So I was rolling with C2. It was basically the LT. It was LT, comms guy, JTAC, 48 gunner, me. That was C2. So I'm rolling with C2. We were third in line.
Command and control for don't understand. C2.
Oh yeah, my bad. So we're third in line. So there's most of the guys had gone before me, and then there was us, and we had one fire team behind us, which was basically like 5 or 6 guys. All the fire teams were roughly the same size. So there's like 5 or 6 dudes behind me. But at this point, we're all off the mountain. We're on flat terrain. We're coming. Our exit point off the mountain was right where the beginning of that little goat path started. So all that narrow goat path was over here. And we're coming off the mountain right here. This is where the comedy, once again, if we ever made this into a movie, it'd be hysterical. At no point did it, in any of my workup training, did I ever ask anyone or even think to ask anyone what that glowing red light in my nods, my night vision, meant. I told everybody at my commissioning ceremony that I was like, oh yeah, there was this nod. And I was like, at the time, I was like, man, that is a major design flaw. Like, I'm looking through this night vision, I'm trying to focus on what I'm looking at, and there's this stupid red light in there. And for everybody that doesn't know, the red light is the battery warning light. It's letting you know that your batteries are about to die. I didn't know. Right when we get down on level terrain, I literally step foot on flat ground. I take one more step, and out of the corner of my eye, probably 30 yards away, a dude pops up with an AK-47 out of the bushes because he finally realizes we're all there, because we'd been virtually silent. Like, we were going real quiet. He realizes we're there. He jumps up, just sprays and prays, full auto on an AK. My night vision shut off. It went black. I literally like flipped my head up, and I'm looking under my night vision, and I see the LT and the JTAC. They took off running forward. So I just ran right at him. And I think I actually ran into the comms guy. He was a SEAL. He was a SEAL as well. I think I ran into him. But I ran into him, and I was so, hindsight, I'm so proud of myself. I ran into him, rolled around behind him, and really quickly, I pulled out a AA battery out of my front pocket on my camis. And I did the little, everybody knows what I'm talking about. They unscrew the battery, and you feel the nipple on the AA battery. Pull the battery out, fling it, put the battery in, make sure the nipple's pointing out, screw the thing on, my nods come back on. So my nods come back on just in time for the JTAC. We had a C-130 Spectre gunship overhead. So dude stands up, sprays and prays, takes off running down the goat path. I run into the comms guy, swap my battery out. This happens in, it's hard to say what the time frame was. It was seconds. It was seconds that this all happens.
Like minutes.
Yeah, it seems like minutes, but in reality, it was probably like 10 seconds. My nods come back on just in time to hear the C-130, so the JTAC had already, I heard out of my ear, I heard the LT give the JTAC the clearance, go hot. So I hear the C-130 rev up. So for those that don't know, when the C-130 is overhead and it's level, and it's orbiting, it's got a very low, dull drone, just up there. But when it goes to fire, it's got to rev up the RPMs because it goes into a bank, because it's got to point that 105 howitzer cannon down. And I think it's a 30 millimeter cannon out the side. It's got the 105, the 30 millimeter. I think it's a 30 millimeter cannon.
20 or 30, I think. Yeah, but
big ass rounds. So the C-130 revs up and lets loose with the 30 millimeter cannon. So you hear the pop, 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 pop. And then I guess the guy he rolled down into the river. So now the bad guy's literally running through the river trying to get away. So the C-130 opens up with the 105. I'm not going to lie. Coolest shit ever. You're sitting there on the ground, and all of a sudden it goes, ka-doom, that 105 howitzer lets loose. I think they fired 2 rounds, and then that was end of story. It was all the bad guys at that point that had popped up. and they could see him on IR. Every one of them was just gone at that point. The C-130 just laid waste to all of them. I'm sitting there, and my night vision's back on, and I'm like, "Whoop, okay, all right, now what?" And then we just fall right back into patrol and head on out back to the vehicles, like no big deal. And we got in the vehicles, we got back to base, and I remember you get back and you account for all sensitive gear first, nods, night vision, whatnot. Count for all the sensitive gear first, give, gear up. And then I go back to my room and I de-jock and I put everything down. And that was when I was just like, I don't like, we're here for 7 months. And I was like, if every mission is going to be like this, I was like, I don't know, man. Like, dude, I'm so dehydrated. I didn't take enough water. We went up over a mountain that we were not planning on doing. I'm so hungry. I'm so dehydrated. Going off the cliff from the adrenaline rush, the adrenaline dump. Like, I'm in my room and I can't even keep my head up in order to go like wash my ass in the shower and get all the dirt out of my butt crack from sliding down the backside of that mountain. But I did. So anyways, that's pretty much the end of that mission.
Thank you, Jocko. Right. I mean,
Yeah.
but right there proves why when you went through your workup and what they did with you, if you wouldn't have had that just brutal beat down in, the more you train, the more you sweat in peace,
I would have panicked. And when the bullets started flying and my nods went out, I would have stood still. I would have just stood there and been like, but instead I immediately knew what to do. I looked underneath my night vision because thank God there was enough illumination from the stars and moon to where I could see 20, 30 feet in front of me, and I saw LT and the JTAC.
You're like, I'm gonna go hug him.
Yeah, and I just ran right at him. I was like, well, there's C2, and I was like, woo, woo, and I just ran right at him. So if I hadn't gone through all that intense training, yeah, maybe at that moment I would have panicked and I would have just froze and stood still, and I could end up getting, shot by this moron that was trying to get us. So instead, it worked out. It worked out well. But more importantly, the next morning when I woke up, I had to do an after action after every mission we went on and send it up to my chief that was over our little SIGINT group. And I sent him up the after action. And that was hindsight. At the time, I really hated doing them because I hated sitting down and typing these stupid little email after actions. I was like, oh my God, this is so dumb. Why am I doing it? But hindsight, looking back at it, I'm really glad I did because it made me sit down and recount everything that happened. And that's when I finally put two and two together that I was like, oh, I gave LT the warning that they were setting up on us. And then LT made the call and we went up over the mountain. And then what happened. And I talked to the JTAC afterwards, and like there was actually like 3 or 4 guys that had been set up on it. The guy we ran into was just the last dude. He was the last guy in line that was going to mop up anybody. Basically, they were gonna get us into a cattle chute, and then once we were all in the trap, they were going to open up and get us. And he was just the last dude in line. So typing the after action report made me put all that in words, and that's when I realized I was like, what in my head I realized what my job. I did my job. I did it like I'm supposed to. I didn't fuck off. I didn't go up there and sit on the hillside and dip Copenhagen all day and just wait for a gunfight to come. I did my damn job that I was trained to do. I sat there and I operated my equipment and I was taking notes and I was writing down which direction these guys were from, and I was taking notes for my translator, what they were saying, and I did my damn job, and my job resulted in the call that the LT made, and potentially, I don't know, but potentially saved a whole lot of damn SEAL lives. And I was very happy about that at that moment. And that was kind of my confirmation at that point that I was like, I'm meant to be here. I'm meant to do this damn job, and I'm gonna keep doing whatever it takes to do it better and better and better every time, to get better at it every time. So that was, and again, that was only like the 3rd mission on a basically a 7-month deployment. So, because at this point I hadn't had any like moments where, well, okay, technically that moment where the dude popped up 30 feet away and sprayed and prayed like should have killed me. It's just the idiot couldn't shoot. He couldn't shoot. He didn't have night vision. He was just spraying and praying at noises he heard in the dark that was us, but he couldn't see us, so he didn't aim. So he just sprayed and prayed, and miraculously none of his bullets hit anybody. He didn't hit shit, which is crazy because there was a whole line of us, stretched out. Every dude was patrol formation. Everybody was about 10 meters apart, but still, there was a whole freaking line of us. There was like 40 something dudes strung out in a row, and somehow this dipshit didn't manage to hit anybody. So yay. But again, at that point, I was just focused on the fact that I did my job and it resulted in the results that it did. I wasn't focusing on the fact that asshole almost shot me. It was like, I wasn't focused on that. I was focused on doing my job.
You were on mission? got back, turned in your after action report, kind of tied in that you did your job, you did it well, you probably at this point in time really saw the value in what the value added you had to your, I'm sure, just like everybody going through training, you're like, yeah, I got this mission and I can see how it works here in make believe, but not always do you see how,
Yeah, in theory.
and so now rubber hits the road. You've gone on missions where you've gone on a couple missions. You've seen your value when it comes to being in contact. And so now we're going on to the next episode of
Yeah.
the adventures of Tom
Yeah.
with the SEALs.
Yeah. So, yeah, like I said, that was, as you said before, like deployments are often long stretches of extreme boredom interspersed between moments of extreme, I don't want to say terror. It's not terror, but adrenaline. Because
Okay.
you're not terrified. It's adrenaline. You get that adrenaline rush and then you go back to doing nothing for long periods of time. So that moment I had with that success where I felt like for the first time I actually did my job and it mattered, at least in my mind, it mattered. That was when I was like, okay, that is what I'm here to do. I am here to sit there and listen to these guys and try to determine where they are and what they're up to so that when moments like that arise, you could be sitting on the hillside for days on end and all the radio chat, bad guy radio chatter you're intercepting is about them getting together for fucking bread and tea. And but what are the Americans doing? And they're just talking amongst each other. But interdispersed in between that, there's one moment where they say something on the radio. We're like, oh, holy shit, holy shit, holy shit. They're getting ready to arm IEDs in the road, or they're getting ready to fire an RPG or whatever. And that's your job. You're waiting for that moment of the critical intel that may save somebody's life.
So let me ask you just something here. So as you're gathering that intelligence, your primary job is to gather that intelligence that impacts your SEAL team. But did you also come across things as you're listening that it's like, well, no, they're not gonna hurt my guys, but they're talking about a mission or an operation
yeah.
that they're going to do over here, and so you can forward that up. So it was more than just
Not usually on mission, because normally on mission you're so far out separated away from anybody else. But it did happen occasionally. Like one time, that same SEAL team, that same deployment. One time, our first indication that they had been watching the base for a long time, and they finally figured out that whenever the helicopters came at night and left, that the overwhelming majority of us were gone, and the base was left somewhat unprotected. Somewhat unprotected. They found out incorrectly that it was not unprotected, but the first indication we had that they were actually attacking our fob while we weren't there was because I heard them. I was way up on top of a mountain, so I was hearing VHF far beyond what you would normally expect to hear, like miles away. And they attacked our fob while we weren't there. And we had a regular army unit. There was a very small regular army unit that was on our fob with us, but again, it was just a regular army unit. And the only guys from our unit that were there were 2 intel guys, 2 comms guy, and an Air Force cook. That was it. That was all that was there. Well, I believe, if I remember correctly, and I feel really bad that I can't remember his name, the comms guy ended up getting a Bronze Star because he did exactly as he was trained to do when they came under attack. And the intel guy, there were one or two intel guys. One of them got a Bronze Star, and a comms guy got a Bronze Star because the minute they got under attack, the intel guy, we had a twin 50 mounted in a tower. The intel guy ran up, got on the 50, and just started laying down on the bad guys. He was just up there just getting after it, just laying down 50 cal rounds. The comms guy, he performed his duties just flawlessly. He got up on the roof, and I remember we heard it. We heard it come over. I don't remember what SATCOM. I think it was SAT 102. We heard him come over to the SATCOM channel, and he was like, "I am a non-trained JTAC," and he went through the whole script of like, there's a script that you have when you're not a trained JTAC and you're calling in emergency air support because you're under attack. He went up on the roof and nailed it. Nailed it. Got up there with the radio. This is such and such unit at fob lane coordinates. Blah 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 blah. I'm a non-trained JTAC, and he went through the whole script that I didn't even know he knew how to do, and he nailed it. And he called in air support. The intel guy was up there getting at it with the 50. The regular army guys started laying it down, And the poor assholes that thought they were going to attack and overrun our base while we weren't there found, as they say, they fucked around and found out. They found out that the base was in fact not non-protected. There were some guys there that had been trained and knew what to do, and they responded perfectly, and it was amazing. But yeah, so I did a lot of times. So back on home base, I had a comms listening equipment set up, and for the radio nerds out there, they're gonna love this. I got with the comms guy, and we went through a couple different iterations of building antennas because I found out that the antenna that the gear I was using came with is a piece of crap. So I went to the comms guy and I was like, "Hey man, this thing's a piece of crap. Like I can't pick up crap of the noise floor. It's so shitty." I was hoping we could build a directional antenna. Well, me and the comms guy got together, and I say me and him, he built me a directional VHF antenna like by hand. He literally sat down with copper wire and like 1x1s and a soldering kit and tips that I had, and he built me a custom made Yagi antenna so I could point it up the valley, and so that's what I was using. So even when I was not on mission, I had a piece of comms gear running, and every day I would go there and I would review. And it was in my room. I literally had it set up in my room. So when I was in my room doing nothing, I had this stupid piece of comms gear behind me that was like going off, and I would have the Terps listen to it, and I gave the interpreters the frequencies. Well, we ended up hearing them on the route up there from Fob Mogusin to our fob. Right there, there was a bridge crossing at the river, like less than a couple kilometers from the fob. They used to like to IED that route. So we heard them setting up. There was they were talking about a convoy coming up. And so I ran down to the jock, and I was like, do we have a convoy coming? Like, and yeah, they're like, no. So I was like, oh, it might be the regular army guys. So later I found out we had a radio that we could just talk to them.
But you just ran over.
I just ran over there. I was like, hey, do you guys have a convoy coming up from Fogmosa? And they're like, yeah. I was like, they're talking about your unit on the road right now. They're setting up IEDs on the route. So I told them, I don't remember what they did. They ended up getting through safe. They didn't hit any of the IEDs. I don't know what they did, but I told them, I was like, hey, they're setting up. They did come under fire. They attacked them, small arms fire, and the convoy responded. Did their job the way they're supposed to do. So I don't know if they ended up deterring them from arming the IEDs like preemptively with air support or whatever, but they didn't hit an IED like the bad guys were setting up. So yeah, I even had that crap running when I was back on the base. So I was always listening to what the bad guys were talking about, trying to figure out if there was anything they said that I could yeah, that was actionable. And it only happened like twice over the entire deployment. But hey, hey,
Yeah.
when it did, I got it. And I told the army guys, I was like, "Hey, man, they're setting up on you guys." So I think they pre-warned them, and then when they attacked, yeah, the turret gunners in the convoy just mowed them down. I was like, "Good, good." I was like, "Yeah, glad that worked out." But okay. So, anyways,
So now you're back. We just tying that down. So now you're going out on another mission.
Mm.
Take it from there. Whatever you want to hear.
yeah, so, the reason this mission stands out in particular is because the amount of close calls that happened all in one mission is a little uh it's a little bit more than you could, if you had a couple close calls on deployment spread out across 7 months, you could chalk it up to chance, luck. You'd be like, oh, I was lucky. When you have like 4 or 5 that happened in one op, you're like, all right, maybe it's not luck. I don't know. At the time, I didn't stop to think about what it was, but you were just too busy processing thing, the next thing that happened, whether it was the mission or prep or whatever. You don't stop to think about it. But anyways, we go on another mission, and we were actually again, we insert in cover of darkness, did a big offset, couple of kilometers out, patrol in, and then we were actually going to push through this valley through 2 different villages that were separated by a couple kilometers. We were going to hit the first one first, and then clear all that one, and then move out to the second one, clear all that one, move out beyond that, period of darkness, get the helos, go home. That was the plan. That was what we were going to do. So we get there, and the SEALs go out and commence their assault. And again, I'm back there. I'm bringing up the rear with the gear. with C2, sort of. But we get done with that village quite a few hours. Basically, it was all morning. We go through, we clear everything, and we're getting ready to move out. Well, not getting ready. We are moving out to the other village. The bad guys come across the radio again, and I get a good lob on them. They're straight off to my right. Very strong signal, so it tells me they're very close. Once again, we were kind of up a little bit on the slope on the left side of this valley as I'm looking at it. So I had really good line of sight out over this whole valley. To say the signal was strong doesn't mean they were like standing next to me. They could have literally been on the other side of the valley, but I had unobstructed line of sight, so the signal would have came in like really strong. I don't freaking know. Unfortunately, there's no way to measure that. I just knew that it was a strong signal straight to my right. I got a good lob on them. I knew where they were. But what the guy said, I got my interpreter standing next to me. Guy comes across the radio and he says, as soon as the last guy passes the cemetery, open fire, essentially, is what he said. That's what I got for my term. So I look up, and the cemeteries, everybody that's been to Afghanistan, there's normally like a little rock wall that they built, and you'll see graves with rocks piled up. They dig a shallow grave and they pile rocks up, and there's usually like a stick with a piece of fabric blowing in the wind. Like that's the headstone. That's it. That's what a graveyard in Afghanistan looks like. So I look up, and there's one right to the left of us, probably 20 yards up. And that's when I look back and I realize that, like, once again, I'm like fifth or sixth from the rear. There's 4, 5, 6 guys behind me. So I immediately take off running, and I run up to LT because he was 30 yards ahead of me in patrol. So I break patrol, take off running up to LT, tell him what the guy said. And I was like, they're right over there. This is what they said. LT gave the call to hardpoint. He pointed at the compound. There was a fairly large compound right over next to us, probably 100 yards away. He pointed at the compound, told him hardpoint. So the SEALs, man, I've seen guys move with a sense of purpose, but when he told them to hardpoint, like I had never seen that before. They ran over there and damn near like they damn near didn't have to kick the door off the hinges. They basically ran through it. They just ran through the door, and they swarm into this compound and take it over. And we all run in there. And again, hindsight, looking back, it was odd that the compound was empty. There was nobody in it, which is weird. Because normally, it had a huge courtyard because that's normally where they would keep the goats. The goats weren't there, which is normal. It's daytime, so the man is probably out with his goats or whatever. But normally the family would be there, but the compound was empty. So hindsight, looking back, that was weird. But you didn't stop thinking about it at the time. The guys go in, we do what we do. They start clearing everything. I immediately do what I'm supposed to do. I get up on the roof, and there was this rickety ass ladder that they made out of logs. We had those combat extendable ladders with us, but they already had a ladder. I wasn't going to take the time. I literally like ran up this rickety ass ladder they had, got up on the roof, and dudes down below literally start filling sandbags. I mean, faster than you can even fathom. They're filling sandbags, flinging sandbags up on the roof, and I'm stacking these bags, making a fighting position. We must have had that fighting position, 4 square walls, just high enough to get in and duck down behind if shit hit the fan. We probably had that thing built in like a minute or two. They were down there just bam, 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 flinging bags up on the roof, and I stack. And I get in there, and so immediately the bad guys they're not panicking, but they're like, oh shit, what's going on? What are they doing? They ran off the road. Like, what are they doing? Blah, 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 blah. So the bad guys are all in panic, and I'm getting lines bearing everywhere. It's too much to even keep track of. The lines just start dropping everywhere. And I was like, oh. So basically I told LT, I was like, well, they're panicking because we just broke patrol. So now they're trying to figure out what we're doing. And I'm like, dude, they're literally everywhere. Like they're all around us with the exception of like right over here. That's the only direction nobody is. But they're over here, they're over here, they're over here, and they're over here. They're literally everywhere. And I was like, I don't even know how many there are. They're all talking over each other. It's crazy. But we get up there. So again, tense moment of excitement. Run in, build the sandbag fighting position up on the roof. I got a terp up there, me, and one of the 48 gunners jumps up on the roof. So we're up there like ready for shit to hit the fan, like ready for it to go down. And then nothing happens for hours, just hours of waiting. Eventually, everybody gets off the roof except me. Like, because my gear's up there. It's basically the only reason I'm here. So I'm not going anywhere. Plus, everything I brought with me is in my bag. Like, I got food, I got water, everything I need is in my bag. I got Pakistani cigarettes, everything I need is in my bag. So I'm not going anywhere. So I just sit up there. Finally, one of the guys, they came over the radio because the bad guys stopped talking. I think they all got together and regrouped. They stopped talking, and then a dude comes over the radio and he says, "You're going to step out and fire the RPG, and that will be the signal for the rest of us to commence the attack." And then the guy responded, and I got a perfect line of bearing on both of them. The dude running the show is right over here, and the dude that said "okay" or whatever the fuck they say in Pashtun, he was right over here, like right in front of me. So right in front of me, there's two compounds with a little alleyway right between them, probably 8 feet wide. The line of bearing was right at the alleyway. So I was like, he's right there. I don't know which compound he's in, but he's right there. He's either behind that building, but it went right down that alleyway. And I was like, he's right over there. So I told the 48 gunner, I yelled off the roof down to Mason, and I told him, I was like, "Hey man, this is what they just said." I told LT over the radio too. Again, excitement. 48 gunner gets back up on the roof. My interpreter gets back up on the roof, and we're all like, okay, it's about to start. Here we go. And then nothing for hours again. At this point, even I'm starting to like give up, and I'm sitting there and I'm leaning back up against the sandbag, staring the direction of the alleyway. And I remember I told the 48 gunner, I was like, "This is what he said," and he's right over there. I was like, literally just point your gun right there at that alleyway. And I was like, when he steps out, mow his ass down. And hours went by and everybody got bored, and it was like nothing was going to happen. There's a lot of grumblings down below of like, what is this bullshit? What is Tommy making this shit up? And my interpreter's like, "No, he's not making it up. That's what they said." And I'm like, "Thanks, man." Like, we called him Pete. Like every dude, I think his name was Muhammad. We called him Pete. And I was like, Pete was like, "No, that's what they said." And they're like, "Yeah, all right. Everybody's getting bored." Well, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, again, I'm sitting here just staring at this alleyway. A dude freaking steps out with an RPG and just rips it. And it went right over my head, so close that like if I had a tennis racket, I could have just batted it out of the sky. It was like right there. I could have grabbed it. It went right over my head. He missed hitting me by probably 8 inches, and he missed hitting the front of the sandbag in placement by 18 inches or so. Either way, I probably would have been hurt really bad. Yeah. Well, if he would have hit me in the head, obviously, duh. But if he would have hit the sandbag in placement, that probably would have hurt a lot. I don't know if I would have lived through it. But anyways, he fired. Sure as shit. All of a sudden, all hell opens up. They start firing from multiple positions. I jump down. Well, initially, I start returning fire. All I've got is my M4. That's it. I got my M4. So I go through a mag in single fire, bang, 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 bang. I go through a mag, dump a mag, another mag in, and I was like, "Screw it, I'm going full auto." And with a M4, like I go full auto with an M4. Anyways, another mag in, and that's when I realized that LT's like yelling at me over the radio of like, "Hey, what's going on?" Because all they hear is just RPG goes, and then gunfire opens up, and the JTAC's down below, like trying to radio over head air. The comms guys calling in a tick back to headquarters, and LT screaming at me over the radio. That's when I was like, busy. "Oh, man, I'm in the middle of something." I was like, "I'm in the middle of something up here." So I duck down and I go over the radio and I give LT to the best of my ability, like, "Okay, RPG, this, bearing, fired, missed, and then I've got effective fire coming from this direction, this direction, this direction." Like, tell you basically a little sit rep real quick. He was like, "Roger that," or whatever the hell, But when I bent down, that's when I looked down and realized that the 48 gunner left his gun up there. So I was like, "Oh shit." I grabbed the 48 and just start hindsight. I don't know if I should have done that or not, because he was pretty pissed I touched his gun. But I grabbed the 48 and I just started going to town with it. And luckily, I don't think I was effective at all, because I still didn't exactly know where they were. They were firing from cover. It's not like they were standing out in the open. So I was just firing in the direction that I thought the fire was coming from, to the best of my ability. But I think the scariness of a full auto 7.62 going off, that was enough to get all the bad guys to be like, "Oh shit," and they all duck. So the fire, that suppressed fire enough to where all of a sudden my terp comes literally like up on the roof like a gazelle, lands in the sandbag embankment with me. And I totally dumped the whole belt on that 48. So I was, I was out of ammo on that. So I set it down, And now me and the Terp are basically looking at each other in the sandbag and embankment. And he had an AK-47 that I don't remember where the hell he got it. We certainly didn't give it to him, but he had an AK-47. And as they like to do, he had his finger on the trigger. We were sitting in the sandbag embankment, literally 4 feet apart, probably closer. And he had his finger on the trigger and he racked around and it went off. At the time it went off and I was like, just dust went up in the air and I was like, what the hell was that? Like I thought maybe maybe we just got hit with something like a grenade or whatever, and that was the dust. And that's when I looked at and I realized what he'd done. He just indeed around, and I look and it's in the sandbag right next to my head, like 2 or 3 inches to the side of my head. He almost shot me in the head at point blank range with his AK. And at the time we were just like, well, don't do that again. Anyways, back to what we were doing. So he looked at me, realized what he did, and his eyes got real big. And I looked over and realized what he did. And I was just like, okay. Anyways, back to the bullets flying. He gets up and just starts going full Afghani with his AK, as they do. He's not even looking. He's just spraying with his AK. And, but whatever, he was helping out.
Suppressive fire.
Yeah. So again, he had AK full auto and he's just spraying. And when he was spraying, it was enough to keep the bad guys down. And then that's when Mason, the 48 gunner, got back up on the roof with all his ammo. And that's when the fun really began. Like he got up there, realized I Winchestered his gun. He put a new belt on and he just went. So at that point, I've got the SEAL up on the roof with the 48 and he's actually looking to see where the bad guys are shooting from, and he's trying to get them, as opposed to I was just trying to do suppressive fire. So at that point, I got off the roof. So he didn't realize, again, he didn't realize I had Winchestered his gun. My bad, So when he started shooting, I think if I remember correctly, he told me to go get more ammo because all he had was the rounds that were on his carrier. So I jumped down off the roof. There's a room directly underneath us. That's where basically everybody was. The majority of the guys were. And I go down there and I open the door. And all the dudes are in there. And there's a huge window, gigantic window with only a lip off the ground about like that big. Everybody is in there in like the fighting prone position looking out. And I'm standing in the door like, what are you guys doing? Like, essentially, I was like, what are y'all doing? Like, the fight's out here. What are you doing? And they told me to get the hell out of the way. And I still hadn't put 2 and 2 together. So I go in there and I assumed the ammo was in there. And I was like, where's the ammo? Where's the ammo? Where's the ammo? And they told me it's actually back outside. It was outside, like right underneath the ladder that I came down. I literally stepped over it. Didn't even see it. I'm just focusing on shit. There's shit going on. So I run back outside. And I managed to get one, flung it up there, another belt of the 48 ammo, flung it up there. And the other room, so we're like an L right here. The other room right here, that's where I forgot to mention we had our Afghan partner force guys with us. Love that. It was great. Their commander came out and he grabbed me by the handle on the back of my body armor and jerked me back. And I freaking elbowed him off of me. And I was like, what are you fucking doing? And I start grabbing ammo and throwing it. And I get all the ammo, fling it up there, and I go right back up the ladder and get back up there and go back to doing my job. Now I got Mason up there laying waste to these assholes. By this point, the JTACs, you can start to hear the aircraft overhead. We've got 10 Warthogs coming in. We got A-10s coming in. So I immediately just go back to my gear and trying to figure out where these freaking assholes are at so I could relay that to the JTAC and be like, hey, they're right over here. They're right over there. Whatnot. Doing my job. When it's all said and done, we get off the, we remain there. We put down the fire. A-10s come in, gun runs, Hellfires, or not Hellfires. Those guys were they carried 500 pounders, like GBU-38s or whatever, 500 pound. Anyways, a couple 500 pounders and a bunch of A-10 gun runs later, I guess the bad guys decided the fight wasn't worth it. And they either were all dead and or ran for their lives. So we stay there. Hours go by. Again, nothing's happening. That's when I go to get off the roof at this point, and I'm finally like, I gotta pee and all that whatnot. So I go get off the roof, and when I get off the roof, that's when I realized that I look at the door, and the window to that room where all the SEALs were had been shot out. And that's when I realized that the reason they were all in the prone position was because bullets were coming in. Because there was a geographic like slope up a mountain over here. So that alleyway where the guy shot at her over here, to the side of that was a big slope going up. It wasn't a mountain, but it was a big ass hillside. and it was high enough to where you could shoot down into the compound. I didn't realize that there were shooters up there, and they were probably way out of effective range, but still, they were lobbing rounds in, and the rounds were they were good enough where they were lobbing them through the window and through the door where all the guys were at. And I see the bullet holes in the door, and I see all the bullet holes in the wall that I was standing in front of. You got the ladder right here, and the ammo is right here, and this whole freaking wall is just like Swiss cheese, just got bullets in it. And as I showed you guys, I pulled my knife out before we left, and I dug two of the bullets out. And one was an AK, and the other was a PKM round. The PKM one's a lot longer. I dug them out, and somehow I managed to hold on to those for my entire career. So when I went to put my shadow box together at the end of my career, I went through digging through all my shit, and I found those bullets, and I was like, "Holy crap!" I was like, "How have I held on to these things all these years through all the moves and like that?" I held on to them. But anyways, we leave. We get extracted. We go back to we go back to the base. This is only about halfway through
Mission.
halfway through that deployment.
Oh, okay.
At that point, like we're only about halfway through that deployment when all that happened. And again, you're not processing any of this crap. It's all about what comes next mission, next thing you're doing. So you're not processing any of this. So uh I don't recall if anything else was significant on that deployment until the very end. And this was the one I didn't get to at church, and it bothers me a lot. But I guess, well, to give you the premise to start the story, I got the phone call that most guys got on deployment. We had one phone. We had one phone in the jock. It was the only phone we had. So when everybody would, everybody had to take turns using the phone to like call their wives and stuff. So I called my wife the next day after we got back, and she picks up the phone, and she's immediately like very upset, crying. And the premise of it was, I think the conversation started with, "I can't do this anymore." And like everybody, I immediately knew as soon as she said it, I was like, I know what conversation we're about to have. And it was, unfortunately, we ended up talking for a while on the phone, but it had become apparent that she didn't want to do this anymore. And I was not exactly, as you would say, in the right mindset to be the leader of the household and the calm, cool, collected, you know, individual to be like, "Hey, everybody, let's calm down. Let's process our feelings." No, I reacted exactly how I would react as if I was in a combat zone. It was attack the problem, triage, move on, and that's pretty much what I did. So that happened about 3/4 of the way through that deployment, and I personally don't think my performance dropped or I was affected in any way. That's why the first time the platoon commander came to me and asked me if I wanted to go home, and I was shocked that he even knew about it. I was like, "How the hell do you even know? Like, who told you?" I only told one person, but I was like, but luckily, it was the junior EOD guy, and I say junior, but this dude had seen some shit. He had been on lots of combat deployments. So I guess he had the experience and the wherewithal to be like, I should probably go tell somebody that Tommy's life is falling apart just in case. So he did, I'm assuming, because that's the only way LT would have found out. But LT came to me and he was like, "Do you want to go home?" And I was like, "No, no, I'm good. I'm good. I'm good." Couple weeks go by. He comes to me again in between missions. "Hey man, are you sure you don't want to go home?" Everything like that. And I was like, "No, I'm good. I'm good. I'm good." Hindsight, I don't know why I was staying there. So, uh, if they ever made a movie or whatever, it'd be like, "Oh, he had a sense of duty and honor." No, I don't think that's what it was. I don't know what it was. I don't know why I stayed. I don't know why I kept refusing to go home, but I said no, I said no, I said no. And then finally, we're pretty much at the end of deployment. We're like a few weeks away from going home. Our relief was already like in the air. Their advon was already like en route. So there was nothing really left on the ops calendar except for turnover ops. That was it. So LT came to me and he was like, "Hey, you're going home." And I was like, "No, I'm good." And he was like, "No, I'm not asking. I'm telling now. You're going home." And I was like, "What?" And he was like, "You're going home." He's like, "It's already," he's like, "There's no," he's like, "This." I got put in my place again because I was questioning the commander. I was like, "No, I'm good." And he's like, and I basically got "I'm not fucking asking. This isn't a democracy or some shit." He was like, "This is an order. You're going home." And I was like, "Okay." I was like, "Okay." And that's when he proceeded to tell me that it had already been arranged and there was a helicopter coming in like 48 hours to get me. So go to your room, pack your shit. You're leaving in 2 days. I was like, "Okie dokie." And so he, and again, just just like the process of getting there, it's quite the arduous process getting home, especially when you're not going home on the normal birds. Because normally, if you're going home, they fly you all. For us, the closest major airfield was Kandahar. You all fly back to Kandahar, and then once everybody's there, the C-17 lands. Everybody gets on the bird, and you go fucking home. That's it. I was going back ahead of all that, so I had to get back to Kandahar, basically Space A. They got a helicopter to come out to Fob Lane just to get me, which is crazy. That took me back to the next closest major fob where the headquarters element was at. And then they got me on a bird from there to Kandahar. And then I just got on a space available C-17 going home into Atlanta. I flew into Atlanta on a C-17, and then I hopped a commercial flight from Atlanta to San Diego. And when I landed in San Diego, my chief was already there. I didn't even know he was there. No clue. My chief was already there. He picked me up from the airport. I had no idea he was there. I landed, and like that's when I found out. He was like, "Hey, I'm outside." I was like, "Oh, shit, okay." So he picks me up, and I go home, and I'll skip the personal shit. She wasn't there, so I went home to empty house and all that whatnot. And I got home on like a Friday or a Saturday or some crap. And so Monday morning, I go rolling into work, like I guess I'm supposed to. Nobody told me what I was supposed to do. Nobody told me, if I was supposed to take a week and like chill out, don't kill anybody, you know, maybe go get a beer, relax, get a fish taco, chill the hell out. No, nobody told me anything. So I just showed up on Monday to work, and I come rolling into the skiff, and I don't remember how long I had been there, but I roll into the skiff, and that's when all of a sudden we get word that something had happened, and they were passing battle roster numbers over the classified chat. So if anybody that knows that, it means that some dudes had died. If they're passing battle roster numbers, it means somebody's dead or been injured severely. So I panic because there were only 3 of us that went over there of my version of me. There were 3 of us. There was me, Chief, and then my buddy Jordan. Chief was home. I was home. Jordan's still there. So I panic, and I'm yelling at the dude who's on the chat. I'm like, who is it? Look up we don't have the, so back at we don't have the battle roster numbers. We don't know who that equates to, but we know they'll come over and say Trident 1712 Alpha. That'll tell you what platoon it is. So I was like, who is it? Because I wanted to know if I thought it was Jordan's platoon. Well, I wanted to make sure it wasn't Jordan's platoon, because I don't even know what I would have done if it was his platoon. But the guy running the chat, Jeremy, he reads off the platoon, and it was mine. It was my platoon. So okay, at this point, I'm panicking because it was my platoon that just got hit, and they're passing more than a half dozen battle roster numbers. So it wasn't like one dude got shot. It was like a whole fire team got taken out, and we don't know what happened. We're still like, I'm fucking panicking at this point. I'm panic walking in and out of the skiff, waiting for information to come in. And then finally later we get the full details hours later that my not entirely my fire team, but my platoon was going to do one of the turnover ops. And the version of me from the East Coast was on the bird because I had left. And it was the second up for the platoon. It was him and his whole fire team and the East Coast Tacky W that took my place on that deployment. And that was the same day I figured that out. And I think I reacted like most guys would have. I went home and basically drank myself to sleep. I stopped and got a very large bottle of bourbon on the way home. Hindsight, it was a bad idea. Shouldn't have done that, but I didn't know what to do. I mean, I literally didn't know what to do.
Right.
I was like, what are you supposed to fucking do? I'm supposed to go over to the SEAL team where nobody's there and just like fall down on my knees and start crying and wreaking havoc to heaven on the grinder. I'm like, well, I don't know. I was just in panic mode. I didn't know what to do. So I went and got a bottle of bourbon and I drank myself to sleep. And the next day, more details are coming out. And that's when you find out what had happened was Blackhawk was inserting them onto a mountain ridge to pull Overwatch on the final turnover op, and the tail rotor clipped a rock outcropping, and the entire helo crew and all rolled down the freaking mountainside. And everybody, pilots, crew chiefs, the SEAL fire team on board, the civilian interpreter dead. Yeah, killed everybody on board, including Blake McClendon from the East Coast, who was my relief on that deployment. And again, you don't process that at the time. You just stuff that down in there. You just put that down in there in that little cancerous tumor that you're working on. That'll come back in 4 decades, and you just keep going. You just keep going. And in hindsight, looking back, when I was getting ready to retire, I was pretty ashamed of my performance on that, because I should have rushed over to the SEAL team, and because they had a beach debt, they had Advon guys that went back and basically, unlocked the door of the SEAL team and start getting everything back up and running for the dudes coming home. I should have ran over there and just be like, is there anything I can do? Like, I can help out. I'm not doing anything. I'm sitting here fucking Ricky Bobbying with my goddamn hands during the day. And then at night, I go home and drink myself to sleep with bourbon. I didn't know what to do. So I'd never lost anybody close to me. Like, we'd never lost anybody in combat at that point. So this is all brand new to me. I didn't know what to do. And I didn't know, and I was too chicken shit to ask anybody to go to one of the senior dudes and being like, hey, this is what happened. That was the dude that relieved me. I'm having a lot of issues. I don't want to be a pussy and make it about me, but I'm kind of having difficulty with this and I don't know what to do.
But that's the culture of especially special operations, but combat arms in general is, that's why there is such a problem with veteran suicide and
Bottling it all up until the cork pops off.
Is you watch these, you think about it, you watch these World War II movies, we all grew up watching John Wayne and all these World War II movies, and
well, my generation was probably more like Platoon and
yeah,
and
but,
Apocalypse Now.
And the Vietnam movies, and those guys never, like the tough, cool guys, they weren't the guys that broke down. It was always the new guy, and so you have this very unrealistic image of what a man's supposed to be and what a warrior's supposed to be.
Who was the dude that played the bad guy in Platoon that ended up shooting the other sergeant?
Devoe.
He's a famous author. He did all the sniper movies.
Tom Berenger.
Nobody makes a movie at the end where Tom Berenger goes home after deployment and drinks himself into a fucking stupor for 6 months.
They do now. They didn't.
Well, they do now. Back then they didn't.
Yeah, they didn't. So, and so you see these things, and you have this really unrealistic. It's a caricature of what a warrior is, what a man is.
Yeah.
And so you're like, you don't go to what we call it in the Army, we call it sick call. You don't go to the medics. You don't go to
no.
You don't go to any of those. You don't go to your other. You don't want to go to your senior.
And you remember when the whole stop the stigma shit started, and they were like, hey guys, it's okay to go talk to mental health, and and they started the whole greater societal like stop the stigma thing, because they realized like, hey, nobody's going.
Yeah, but that took years to break into the like regular.
Well, when society had implemented it, the military, oh hell no, dude, the military were like,
well, and then even your regular Army units, when I say regular Army, I'm using that in as a generalization of
conventional Army units,
conventional warfare, Navy, Air. We don't talk because Air Force doesn't really have special. No, I'm joking. They have special operators in the Air Force. I know
CCTs and the PJs.
I got a buddy was a JTAC, Jack Fanning. So, but anyway, I'm joking. It's a rivalry there.
I know we all make fun of the Air Force,
but I mean, hey, they get air conditioning in hotel rooms when they deploy. And
I know the Marines had unair conditioned tents in Kandahar, and the Air Force built a Holiday Inn. Hey, every room had an air conditioner.
Who's smarter?
Yeah.
But anyway, as I digress, but so there was a time when, and I can even, remember as I was getting out, and then I was involved as a trainer with the military in the mid, 2005 to about 2013. And that started really becoming an issue that people addressed, but it took forever. It still didn't break into the special ops.
So do you remember when the third location decompression stops became a thing?
We didn't have those, but
Oh yeah. So it all of a sudden, it sounds so stupid in hindsight, but all of a sudden the DoD realized that it was like, hey, maybe it's not a good idea to have all these guys over in combat, and
tomorrow they're home.
Right. So last night you went on an op, you got back to base, dejocked downloaded your gear, got some sleep, and then you got on a C-17 or a C-5, and 24-ish hours later, you're staring your wife and kids in their face back in the States. They're like, maybe that's not a good idea. And it took to the point where there was a lot of high profile incidents where finally the military was like, okay, we're going to do this third location decompression stop. And I got two things to say about that. One, NSW Special Operations got forced to do it, and if they were going to do it, they were going to do it their way, because I found out how the regular units did it, and their idea of a decompression stop was Ali Salim Air Base in Kuwait, which I've had to go through twice, and it's basically like being on Mars.
Yep.
It's a hellhole. It is
Been there.
miserable. I was in a dirt floor tent.
Soaked in gasoline to waterproof them.
Yeah. I was in a dirt floor tent with one of those stupid air conditioning units they had, but it was just a tent with a flap. It wasn't even a fucking door. So you're basically air conditioning Kuwait. Bunk beds that had there was no, like, it was a metal bunk bed with a piece of shit mattress. Yeah. And like, you just went in there and laid on the mattress. That was it. That was their idea of decompression stop. I experienced that on my way home when I got sent home early, because I went through Ali Salim Air Base, and I saw that and I was like, holy shit. So I'll give NSW credit. NSW was like, if we're going to be forced to do this, we're not sending our guys to Ali Salim Air Base or some shit like that. They're like, we're going to go to like Ramstein. We're going to go to Germany or Spain, and we're going to get a week over there. We can have a whole nother discussion about what happened there. You could imagine what happened. They turned a SEAL team loose on Heidelberg, Germany for a week after we had just been in combat for 6 or 7 months. So you could imagine how it went. I'll leave the finer details out.
That sounds like fun.
Long story short, after I don't know how many rotations, the city kindly asked us to go somewhere else. Put it that way. They asked us to go somewhere else. Well, the East Coast guys were going to Spain, and the West Coast guys were going to Germany. And then they ended up changing it up after that, and it was even worse after that. It was even more ridiculous after that. But what the decompression stop consisted of is you'd get there, they'd pick you up at the air base, they'd bus you to the hotel where you were staying. The beach dead had already checked you in. They were handing out your room keys. And then they told you, y'all piled into what they rented out one of the conference rooms, and you go in there and they give you a little brief, blah, blah, blah.
Reintegration.
Da 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 da. Here's all the shit you need to know, blah, 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 blah. And then they go, the psych is in room such and such and such and such. He's got a clipboard hanging on his door. You're required to go by and sign up for, basically a 15-minute interview, what we call the checkup from the head up, or checkup from the neck up.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's what you did. You went by and signed, you go in there and you sit down with the psych, and he goes, were you in combat? Yeah. Did you kill anybody? Yeah. Do you see any dead bodies? Yeah. Do you have any problems? No. Okay. Go have fun. Next. And you're like, cool. So that's what it equated to. And whatever. We could sit here and nitpick this shit, hindsight, but I mean, we were in a full blown war in 2 different countries, and guys were literally turning and burning.
And it was,
so what do we expect them to do? Bring us home stateside and send us to Disneyland for 6 months with daily mental health,
but
with somebody with a little singing bowl to well, what are we going to do?
So the funny thing is, if you think about the incidences of combat stress, PTSD, whatever you want to talk about in World War II and Korea, not that it didn't happen, and even early in Vietnam. So what happened is, when there was no airplane, there was no jet, there was no jet transportation. So you didn't, when those guys got
done, rotate home.
Well, you didn't in World War II and Korea, you were there for the duration.
Correct.
For the whenever you got there, you weren't coming home until the war was over.
Long time.
So there was that. But then when they sent you home, they didn't put you on a plane, and you weren't in combat today.
Yeah, they put you on a ship. They put you
on a ship with your buddies.
Yeah,
with the guys that you went through these, and you had a chance to actually decompress and to figure out that you all had the same problems and to talk through them.
To talk about this in a larger context, I've actually, I've read quite a few books on this, and oh my God, crap, I can't remember his name. Damn it. Anyways, he's wrote several books.
The sheepdog guy, right?
Sebastian Younger.
Okay, no, that's
Sebastian Younger wrote Tribe. It's a very small book, but it had some very profound messages in it. And one of the things that he pointed out was, as you said, the so-called incidents of what we now call PTS. It's gone by many names: shell shock. I don't combat stress. Whatever.
Warriors, soldier's heart.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So it's gone by many names. There's been comedians that have literally made. George Carlin made a huge hilarious skit where he was like, "Oh, if we just make the name bigger and more complex, it lessens the severity of what it is. It's now post-traumatic stress syndrome." Man, he gave this whole joke on it, but what he's telling is true.
Right.
He's like, you try to desensitize or destigmatize or whatever you want to call it by calling it something more complex, but in Sebastian Younger's book, he pointed out that the so-called incidents of this have gone up over time, even though our technology and everything has kind of removed guys from. So how is it that the incidents of post-traumatic stress have gone up since trench warfare in World War I, which is basically like modern warfare at the worst you could possibly imagine it? Just disgusting. It was the first mechanized war.
What's it?
Mustard gas,
chemical agents, machine,
Yeah, it was the first time. So one of the interesting anecdotes that he makes in the book was it was because in World War I and World War II, all of society went to war. All of society went to war. When you came home, if you came home on an R&R for whatever reason, or when you came home from the war, you were welcome home from the war by all of society. Because, I mean, come on, man, Rosie the Riveter, everybody the whole thing, the war bond drives, like it was you had the Boy Scouts collecting scrap metal for God's sake so they could make tanks and aircraft. It was an all of society effort. You go to Afghanistan in combat and you come home to this, where life back home has carried on as if nothing's even going on over there. And
there's, you see societally, there's, because, also in the World War I, World War II, Korea, like I said, even up until Vietnam, war was not a news cycle, was not in the news cycle. I mean, you'd get film clip, we've all seen.
They had the film strips before the movies back in World War II.
Right, but you didn't.
Our boys are up in Germany, and all that
but
crap.
You didn't see the carnage.
Didn't see it. Yeah.
And it wasn't every day.
But it had more to do. Sebastian Younger points out in that book that it had more to do with the PTSD, had more to do with the society that the veteran was returning to. Well, not necessarily what he saw and did. And the reason when you look at the instance of PTSD in the ramp, it starts at Vietnam.
Right. Because that's when. So my point that I was making there was that's when it started. It was society saw it every day. And
you had war correspondents.
You had embeds, you had war correspondents. You got a list every night they would read your list of names of who died today in Vietnam. And so what that did is
Vietnam was also the first time we had a draft of people who didn't want to go.
Right.
In World War II, people were lying about their age to get in. And in Vietnam, we were drafting people, and you had the whole anti-war. So it was the first time that there was a schism. And I know somewhere out there, there's going to be a historian or someone who's just going to tear me to shreds or whatever. I'm hitting the highlight reels here. Okay.
No, you're right.
Wave tops.
But what happens is we had
a schism between society and what was happening.
Society, the people back home just get fatigued, and so when it drags on for years and years, especially if you look at Afghanistan, that was, a 20-year war.
It's kind of like societal nihilism, because you went from World War II, World War I, World War II, whole of society effort. Korea, to an extent, because it was the Chi-Coms. It was fighting the Chi-Coms, communism, whole of society effort. Vietnam, there's a schism. The people back home are seeing it. You got Jane Fonda going over and hanging out with the Viet Cong. I heard you got Hollywood doing their wackadoo shit. So now there's a schism. So it goes from whole of society effort to getting spit on in the airport, called a baby killer, to ambivalence, I guess.
Yeah.
They just don't, instead of getting spit on in the airport, which would have been crazy, I would have literally stabbed somebody. They just don't care.
Well, I think that, so, you saw like in Desert Shield, or I know we're rabbit trailing here and
Oh, I know. We totally went off the rails.
But that's okay, because I think it's important to, again, this is.
But what we're talking about is going to lead to where I'm going and to what happened.
Is very important. So you come back a lot of times, like you came back, so if you look at Vietnam, guys came back after the original, after those first few deployments, you came back as an individual. You weren't a replacement. So you came back, you went and did your year.
Not Vietnam was the first time guys flew home on an airplane
Right.
and landed and just walked into a civilian airport.
Exactly.
And like, I think back to that.
You came home by yourself. You didn't come home
I didn't come home as a unit.
like even when I came home from both Cuba.
I came home in a C-17 full of other service members, and we landed in Atlanta. And you just walk into the international terminal at Atlanta Airport, and with the exception of and God bless them for being there, with the exception of some old gray-haired USO vets, you walked off into the airport, and you're just looking at people that are like, "Oh, I'm getting ready to fly to Tampa," and you're like, "Cool."
Yeah, so it was for us. I can honestly say my experiences flying home were a little bit different, but I was, when we came back from Cuba, it was kind of screwed up, but that was 2002. And so we were very much still in that 9/12 phase as a country where everybody supported what was going on. Everybody supported, and then,
now,
and then 2004, when I came back from Iraq, we didn't actually fly into commercial space. We flew directly into
well, remember,
McCord, but you're doing different.
99% of the time when you flew back, you flew back on an C-17.
Right.
On the West Coast, you landed right there at NAS North Island, and your whoever or however you were getting home was right there at the airport, waiting on you.
Right.
So the first time, you literally land and walk off the C-17, and there's your wife and child staring you in the face. Now, I do want to give NSW credit. I found out quite a while later that NSW actually did bring all the wives in before we came home. They would bring the wives in, and they would set them down and essentially just be like, "Okay,
He's not the same dude.
give the man space." I know it has been insane running a household by yourself. You got kids screaming and yelling, and the water heater goes out, because everybody knows the old trope, like the minute you leave on deployments, when the water heater explodes and the car breaks down. It's like a running joke because it happens.
Refrigerator stops. Washing machine dies.
Kid gets the flu. Washing machine breaks. Car breaks down. Literally like 3 days after you leave on deployment, it's like there's gremlins just waiting to strike. So they would sit the wives down and be like, "Listen, I know it has been madness while he's been gone, but you need to give the man space." So I will give NSW credit for that. They did set the wives down, and they would bring in the psychologists and the support. I can't remember what they call them. The FRG folks. They'd bring
family
them
readiness group,
folks, and they would bring them in and just be like, "Oh," and that's essentially all they did, because it's all we had. So anyways, enough going down that tangent and the rabbit hole, but it basically sets up for the larger conversation, or the end of this conversation here. So all of the little near misses that I described on combat missions, there's a whole lot of them. There was a whole lot of them. RPG misses, IED misses. Like I told you at the church, I was up on the roof of one building, and a guy shot at me, and the bullet passed so close to my head that it ruptured my eardrum. I didn't know what happened. I looked over at Joe, the SEAL that was up there, and I was like, "Ah, what the hell was that?" And he was like, "Somebody's shooting at you, retard." And I was like, "Oh shit!" And I was like, "Oh," and I got down. I didn't know, he ended up getting the dude, by the way. We figured out where he was at. He lobbed a 40 Mike round right through the doorway. Took care of that problem. But again,
thank you, Joe.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Shouldn't have shot at me. But anyways, so I go through all this crap, and so here we are, years later. I'm getting ready to retire, and by this point, I had been out of an operational role for a year or two. Well, longer than that, 3 years. I'd been kind of out of an operational role, but I think the reason it didn't take, what happened to me didn't start sooner, was because so I commissioned as a warrant officer, and I had to go do my what I called my tactical timeout tour. I had to go pay the Navy. That I had to go give the Navy a regular Navy tour. And then I went right back to NSW as fast as I could get there. Originally, I was slated to go right back to NSW. Once again, another example that there is, in fact, a higher power, was that ended up not happening for some other reasons. In hindsight, looking back, that was probably the best thing that could ever happen to me, because it took me out of that environment for almost 3 years, and I was able to chill out and just kind of relax. I ended up losing a lot of weight. I went sober for a long time, just because I wanted to. Well, okay, well, let's face it, I probably realized I had a problem. I got mentally healthy enough to realize that I had a problem, and I got control of my diet. I always exercise. I mean, you're an NSW all the
All
time.
right. Yeah. I mean,
But now I didn't have a poor diet, stress, cortisol, and alcohol fighting against me. So I got in like phenomenal shape. I did a Spartan Ultra. I was doing great, man. One of my buddies, Chris, that commissioned a year before me and him just kind of kept going back and forth, and we both did fantastic. So leaving the community for a few years was probably about the best damn thing that could ever happen to me. But towards the end of that, right before I went back to NSW, was when I first realized I had a problem. Basically, I was sitting at home alone one evening. I don't know what day of the week it was, and I just had a full blown nervous breakdown. And I don't know why. There wasn't anything going on. It's not like my dog died or anything. Nothing happened.
Well,
I just had a full blown like nervous breakdown. And I did, what most guys did. I shoved that down deep. That only lasted for a few weeks, and then finally, I went to sick call over at Little Creek Amphibious Base in Virginia. I went into sick call, and I went into the doctor, and I was like, "I got a problem." And they gave me those little questionnaires that they have
yeah.
developed, and which it's so creepy filling them out. In the past 7 days, have you thought about killing yourself? Once, more than 3 times every
Yeah.
day?
Yeah.
You're sitting there going, every day? And you're
I
like filling this
don't.
shit out.
And you're like,
So,
once or twice,
so
right?
I'm out in the lobby filling out these questionnaires, and then I get into the room with the doc, and like he takes one look at the questionnaires and goes, oh shit, okay. So again, he's just an MD, not a shrink, not a
Right.
psych. He's not a psychologist or psychiatrist. He's an MD. So he goes, oh, here's some Zoloft for you. So I get put on an antidepressant. And I think that initial antidepressant kind of tamped it down for a little while. Anybody that's been on antidepressants will know exactly what I'm talking about. You no longer have the highs or the lows. You just kind of have right. It's like every day of life is like walking through a thick fog. You don't get really sad. You don't get really happy. You're just like dull. Well, so that kind of kept the bottle on it for a long time actually. But then when I got back to NSW, it was only about a year and a half later that I began the retirement process. And anybody that's retired from the military know exactly what I'm talking about. You start going through, you start going to a butt ton of medical appointments and getting all your paperwork in order. And the only way I can surmise what happened to me was when you start going to all these appointments and you start getting your life in order, your paperwork and your medical record and all that shit in order. There's a whole combination of factors that really come to a head all of a sudden at once. One, it's the finality that the life as you know it is about to come to an end.
Right. What am I going to do when I grow up?
There's the fear and panic of what comes next. There's a few other factors in there that if I really sat down and wrecked my brain, I could probably make a pretty sweet Venn diagram out of it. But the coup de grace, cherry on the cake, is when you start going through all the medical shit and like uh TBI clinic and all the stuff like that. And what really did it for me was when you start going through the retirement thing and they see that, well, one, you're already on an antidepressant. Okay. So you go talk to psych and everybody's seen the memes. It's like everybody's seen the memes where it's like the joke of like you get done talking to the psych and the psych's like, wow. And you're like, yeah, man. Yeah. And he's like, wow, you are wow. And you're like,
Messed up.
yeah. And you start telling all your crap. And but anyways, what happened to me was I guess my body adapted to the dose of the SSRI I was on. So it started not being effective anymore. So I go talk to the psychiatrist at Portsmouth Naval Hospital. And I think initially they upped the dosage of the one I was on. But then what came along with that was some side effects, sleep side effects, a whole bunch of other weird stuff. Anybody can Google what I'm talking about. You'll know exactly what I'm talking about. I started getting a lot of weird side effects. So I go in and he puts me on a second one that helps out with those side
Side
effects. So I get on that. Week or two later, as I told you guys at the church, I was on my way to work, and it only took me about 10 or 12 minutes to get um, to work from the house. And I'm driving. And I remember, I mean, I literally remember it very, very, very vividly. I'm driving on the way there, and the radio goes to like a commercial break, and it was like really silent for a second. And in that split second of silence while I'm driving to work or whatever, a random thought popped in my head. It was like, hey, maybe you should kill yourself. And I go, whoa, what was that? And first off, it's really weird to be thinking about yourself in a disassociative manner like that, where you're like, you are thinking about what did your brain just tell you? Like it's not you. First off, that's really weird to be thinking like that. But it's also very unsettling and unnerving to have a thought that you don't know where it came from. Something popped into your head that you don't think was organically you. So that kind of freaked me out. Luckily, it was a few days later that I had my next appointment with the psych over at Portsmouth, and I told him about it, and he goes, his response was like, yeah, that's been a common reported side effect of that medication. And I go, wait a minute. You put me on a medication where and I Googled it while we were sitting there in the office, and I was like, you put me on a medication where one of the common side effects is suicidal ideations? I was like, I fucking lost it. I was like, are you trying to make me kill myself? What are you doing? Nothing changed in my medication from that. We didn't change anything. But again, to remind you, I'm well into my retirement process at this point. So you go to do a sleep study and they go, holy shit, you don't sleep. And I was like, yeah, no shit, Sherlock. I told you that. That's why I'm here. So they go, oh, here's some gabapentin. There's your gabapentin. So by this point, I'm on like, I don't know, at least 5 medications for various problems that I'm having. Sleep, major depressive disorder, blah, 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 all this other crap.
So I just want to break in here. So approximately how old were you at this time?
41.
So here you are.
Like 40, 41.
Yeah, early 40s.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't. And you are on 5+ medications just so you can function. And, in what you're telling us, what you just were talking about is in general, at this point in time, you're in great physical shape. You're working out.
I was in fantastic shape.
You're doing ultra marathons and Spartan races and all this stuff. Yet you have
physically, I was
right
phenomenal.
But
mentally,
for you to, so you're in peak performance. You are a specimen of
well, oh god,
you look like what a warrior should look like.
My buddies are going to hear this and be like, Tommy was a nerd.
But no, I mean, the point is you're
I was in very good physical shape.
You are a specimen of what a warrior should look like.
I was definitely not, like MMA, whatever, but I was but for my size, my power to weight ratio was like, phenomenal.
But you need 5 medications to keep your head right.
Just so I could function.
Just so you can get through the day.
Yeah.
And even those 5 medications weren't doing it because you're not sleeping and you're having suicidal.
No, and then the problem is you make matters worse because you're not sleeping. You have major depressive disorder. So you go back to the best tried and true medication that the military knows, alcohol.
Oh.
So anybody that's been on SSRIs knows that that's not something you're supposed to do. You're not supposed to drink when you're on a lot of these medications because it can actually make it worse. And it did. It made it a lot worse. But the problem was I was caught between a rock and a hard place. If I didn't go home and have 7 glasses of wine or 4 bourbons, I would lay there in bed. I mean, literally in bed, looking at the ceiling until the sun would come up. You may or may not nod off. You don't remember,
but your brain doesn't.
But your brain doesn't fall asleep.
Yeah,
your alarm goes off in the morning, or the sun would come through the window or whatever, and you would wake up just like a full blown zombie. So I got trapped in a cycle of
a couple of kids that worked with me that had that problem when I was when I was a trainer, and they were like, their doctors told them like, we know we're going to get you like addicted to painkillers, or their big one for them was Ambien. We understand that that's going to be an addiction, but it's easier to treat the addiction later
than it is to watch you get cirrhosis of the liver.
Than it is to just
or whatever.
For them, it was a lot of pain. Yeah. We can't deal with, they were doing nerve ablations and surgeries and all these things. And they're like, we can't control your pain to the level that you need to without getting you addicted to narcs or to sleep medication. So we're going to get you addicted. We know that. And we'll deal with that later,
Right.
And so I think you were kind of in the same boat. It's like, well, what am I going to, and so they would do the same thing, they would drink or, some of them would do other things to.
I mean, most of that's why alcohol was such a problem, is because it was the only thing you could do.
Right.
You
couldn't.
What am I going to do? Go home and smoke a joint?
Because then if I come up on I come up hot. I mean,
you could go right ahead. Watch what happens.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So anyway.
So you drink. But anyways, Um, so I had that first suicidal thought. Um, it got progressively worse. Basically, it was like the first suicidal thought was like the train just starting to leave the station, and then once the train really got moving, it got worse real quick, real bad. So one day I was on the way to work, and once again, I basically drank myself to sleep that night. To give everybody context, this is also right when COVID shot off, so there's all that hysteria going on as well. There's the shots rolling out in the military, and there's all that. There's all that controversy and concern as well. Guys are panicking, don't know what we're gonna do. So this is all happening all at the same time. Um, so one morning, I get up, and I head to work. And I got there. I didn't sleep, so I got up really early, and I get to work. And I go over to the chow hall, and I get a big cup of coffee, and I'm like, you know what? We had this really amazing like 7-story climbing wall built on the outside of a big 7-story building, and you just had a stairwell on the top because guys could also go up to the top, and that's where you practice rappelling. So you would do rappelling off the roof, and then you could climb up. And we had the auto belays on the outside. It's fantastic. I miss it almost more than anything is the climbing wall because you could go over there and it was a fantastic workout and whatever. Like, but anyways, I got a cup of coffee, and I was like, I'm gonna go up to the top of the climbing wall on the stairs, and I'm gonna watch the sun come up, and I'm gonna sit there and drink my coffee, and I'm gonna chill, and I'm just gonna try to chill out, tell myself it's not gonna be a bad day, that everything will be okay. And I get up there, and I watch the sun come up, and it was nice, it was great. I sat there drinking my coffee, watching the sun come up, and then I turn around because the climbing wall faces west, so I turn around from the sun or whatever, and you're looking out over the compound or whatever. And I walked up to the edge, and I looked down the climbing wall, and down there was a tiny little area right in front of the climbing wall where we had the rubber, so you could when you landed from the auto belays, you didn't land on concrete, because you do that 1,000 times and f your knees up. Uh, but right beyond that was asphalt, and I looked down at the asphalt, and again, a thought that did not feel like my own was like, maybe you should just jump. Like, just fucking jump. Like, just stop all this. Like, stop the struggle, stop the pain. You could just end it all right now. Just jump. Like, and there's a safety rail right there that when you're doing rappelling and all that whatnot like that, you would that's where the guys would tie off to that were the instructors and the safety dudes. They would tie off to that, and they were the ones watching everything. But it's literally just like a handrail. So all you got to do is just right underneath it, and then you off the fucking wall. Luckily, I didn't even make it to the other side of it. I had that moment, that thought came in my head, and I panicked, but something told me to get the hell off that roof right now, and I did. I went right over to the stairs and was like, "Oh shit!" And I was like, down to the ground floor. But then I went back over to my truck in the parking lot, and I crawled up in my truck, and I broke down and cried for probably 30, 45 minutes. Luckily, again, super early in the morning of sunrise, there's nobody there. So I could sit in my truck and cry like a big baby and nobody saw me. So I did. And I cleaned myself up. I had a handkerchief, and I wiped my face off, and I cleaned myself up, and I ran inside and into the bathroom. Luckily, again, there was nobody there. Nobody saw me. So I went in the bathroom and washed my face to basically make it look like I haven't been fucking crying for 45 minutes. And then I just went in my office and logged on my computer and began my workday like nothing happened. Well, so that was like Tuesday or Wednesday. And when that happened, that's when I was like, I made the call where I was like, okay, this isn't working. It's making things worse. Like, I can't do this. I was like, I just almost threw myself off the fucking roof. I can't do this. So I made the decision that day that, I was going to go cold turkey, and I was going to stop taking all the medications that they gave me, everything all at once. And I knew what was going to happen. I was like, okay, this is going to be a wild weekend. But I went home, and I went home, and I threw all the medication in the garbage. And Thursday night, the last time I took my medication was Thursday night, so that I knew by the time I started having withdrawals, it'd be Friday afternoon, and everybody rolls out early on a Friday anyways. Not letting the cat out of the bag here. Like, everybody rolled out Friday afternoon, unless you had a reason to be there. You got out of there probably like 1, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So I knew that by the time anything started getting really bad, I'd be home. So that's what I did. I went cold turkey Thursday night, got home Friday, and I just rode it out over the weekend. I was still drinking. at the point. So basically I stopped taking the medication, but I still self-medicated with copious amounts of bourbon to put myself to sleep. But at least I got off the medication. So I was back to what I used to be, where I was just a full-blown alcoholic instead of a full-blown alcoholic on 6 medications.
And suicidal.
Yeah, but it was the next week that I don't know why. Again, like I told y'all at the church, I don't know why I did this, but right around the corner from my house was Virginia Beach Beacon Baptist Church. It was a little white church right on the corner. You could literally walk to it from my house. Uh, I made the decision that Sunday that I was going to go. I was going to go to church. At that point, I probably had not been to church in 35 years, probably, because I don't remember the last time I had been. Anyways, so I went, and it was hysterical how I did it because I didn't even look up. Like, I
I'm gonna go to that church.
I didn't even look up like what service times were or anything. I just showed up Sunday morning at what I felt was the appropriate time to be there.
Yeah.
And I come walking up, and a man who was out front, Jerry, I believe, one of the deacons was out front, and he was like, "Well, we're still in." He's like, "We are, service isn't until this time. We're still in small groups." And he's like, "But we could." He's like, "We could put you." And I told him who I was, and I was, I was in the military or whatever. And he goes, "Oh, well, we've got a small group over here that's got a few veterans in it." He's like, "That might be a good spot for you." And in my head, I was like, "What the hell's a small group?" I was like, "Whatever, dude." I'm like, I was here to go to church. I don't know what I'm doing. Small group. Great. Sounds good. Whatever.
What else am I gonna do, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm like, I'm here. I've made the commitment. I'm here. I got out of the car. I made contact with a human. There's no turning back. Like, I'm here. So we go over to the little building, and we walk inside, and he opens the door to this small group, little Bible study. Later, I found out that's what that was. It was Bible study. And I walk in, and as soon as I walk in the door, I look up, and there's 2 guys from my unit, and it was very surreal. Like I told you guys at the church, it was like in my head, I felt like I had been caught. Like they saw me, and I remember they saw me, and like they looked up, and it was like that, and I saw them, and it was the same look on my face, except for a totally different reason. They were probably looking at me like, you're here, okay, and mine was shit. I've been caught. And that's literally what I was thinking in my head. I got caught. And I was like, oh crap.
So a
Uh,
couple things I just want to break in. So two big things is, or maybe three things, just at this point in the story. So one, I just feel it's important to point out to guys, to anybody that's listening to this, if you are at a point where you are having suicidal ideations, if you are feeling that, and you go to your truck and you cry for 45 minutes, you are not a big fucking baby.
yeah.
That is normal at that situation. Now, what's going on in your mind is not normal. And I don't mean that in a bad way. That is not normal, and it is normal to cry and break down. So don't. When I talked to a couple weeks ago, I talked to Jimmy Gardner, which is Rowdy Decker's granddad, and Jimmy lost an eye in Vietnam. And he talks about, he called it a pressure. He didn't really want to talk about suicide, but he talked about guys feel that pressure, and it's that pressure, the world's collapsing around you. So if you feel that pressure and you cry about it, it does not make you a baby. It does not make you weak. It just, you're at that point in time in your life. And I think as you were talking about those suicidal ideations that, and we're talking about higher power, right? So we've had that conversation. We're stepping around the higher power being God. Those suicidal ideations, maybe I don't get into it as enough to know the difference, but there is, in the religious world, there's two terms that are thrown around. One is demon possession and one is demon oppression. And when you hear those voices that are not your own, and you clearly hear them in your head, typically when they're hey, you should stop drinking, or hey, you should go to church, that's the Holy Spirit. But when you hear those voices that tell you,
Kill yourself.
throw yourself off there, that is typically, however you want to look at it, demon oppression, so, and so when you got to the point where you're like, well, I've tried everything else in the world, let's try this Jesus thing. And,
Pretty much.
and, those guys in the, that you knew, they're like, they were probably looking at you, and not in a judgmental way, going, man, I thought, cause what do we try to do as men? Well, not just as men, but men tend to do this more, maybe a little bit more than women do. What we try to hide it, right? We try our best, whether it's through medication, through alcohol, whatever, denial. We try to hide the bad shit. And
Mhm.
so they were probably thinking, shit, I didn't think Tommy was having troubles. I thought we were the only, they probably were thinking to each other, looking at each other back and forth going, man, I thought we were the only two that had this.
I
And,
think I think it was a combination of that, and I also,
and probably you hadn't been to church for 35 years and they probably,
and they knew it,
and they
like,
knew it and they're
by
like,
the way I conducted
yeah.
myself.
And they were like, oh, if
To
this,
say I was a little bit of a wild card would be a
yeah, well,
tad bit of an understatement.
so anyway, I just really wanted to talk about those things because I know a lot of we talked about when we rabbit trailed about the stigma of mental health and those things. Part of it is we run ourselves down for getting to the point where we have to seek help, and it's very important, guys and ladies. Anybody that's listening to this that's having those struggles, feeling that pressure, as Jimmy called it. You are not alone, and you are not anything less than because you have those feelings. You've been through things that most people would not, most people that saw the things that you saw in combat in your Navy career, they probably would have they probably would have chewed on their Glock long before you had those
Well,
thoughts.
unfortunately, a lot of them did.
And a lot of them did. And it doesn't mean that they're weak. It just
and,
means they couldn't cope with it. Where
a lot of them,
you were
unfortunately,
resilient
a
enough
lot of
to,
them, a lot of them
yeah.
did, man.
And
But
and so we have to stop. I mean, we as veterans need to really say, and like I said, I don't mean this to be anything other than you were not weak. Your body had taken all of it took, and it probably took more than most fucking people could ever imagine to get there. So you weren't a baby for crying.
yeah,
Um,
and then
and then you did what we do. Then you went in and hit it until finally, the
yeah.
Holy Spirit said, "You ain't gonna hide this anymore, buddy. You
Yeah,
need to."
I basically hid it until I couldn't anymore.
And
Until it was literally becoming, I was like, I can't,
and so
I can't freaking hide it anymore. Like,
and so
and I didn't exactly have that conversation in my head where I was like, let's give this Jesus thing a try. That's not exactly how I put it,
right,
but in my head, I was like, okay, I've tried ignoring it and drinking. Clearly, that's not going to be a long-term solution. I've tried medical. I've tried using man-made interventions, medical, and it damn near caused me to kill myself. So what else do I have to lose? Let's give this Jesus thing a try. It's not exactly how I
yeah,
articulated it in my head,
but
but
that,
that's
that's
basically the general gist of the idea.
that's a good way to boil it down. I know
Yeah.
there's a lot of people that have come to that.
And again, I equate some of it to all the way back when I was thinking when I joined the military, where I had the foresight and the wisdom at such a young age to be like, okay, well, this uh, what I'm doing is not working. I don't want to go to college, so I better get the hell out of here. And I joined the military. I had that moment again where I was like, okay, what I am doing, alcohol, that's not working. That's not going to last in the long run. This medication thing, that's not working. So I got to do something. And that's when I made the decision. I was like, I'm going to go to the little church around the corner. I didn't know what it was. I just knew there was a church there. I didn't know they were Baptists. I didn't know what they were. I just knew there was a church there. And I was like, there's a church right there. I go right by it all the time on the way to the grocery store and Starbucks. I'm going to church. And it just so happens that I walked into a church and there were two of my buddies from the unit standing there. And it turns out that the guy that was running the small group was a retired medic as well. Yeah, there was a handful of vets in there, and that was basically the beginning of the process. And I guess the last thing that really happened in this whole process, well, not the last. There's a couple things, but the next big thing that happened that kind of told me that I maybe was on the right path was I did like most guys from special forces do. Like I went in like whole hog, like off the top rope. I didn't just dip a toe into it. I was like, nah, I'm going in, I'm going big. And so I started signing up for everything, volunteering for the fall festival. I mean, I went all in, and I knew from a lot of the books that I read that part of the problem veterans have was, especially guys in SOF, was one minute you have this social structure, and then you retire, and now you're out here, and you don't have that anymore, and that transition is what ends up killing a lot of guys. So I was like, I have to develop something out here to replace this. I still live here. I'm still friends with all these guys. I'm still in a lot of the chat groups. I'm still going to meet up for beers on Fridays and I'm going to see how guys are doing. And there's going to be retirement, but it's different. You're not in it every day, like surrounded by it. So it's different. So I was like, I got to get something out here. And that was in small part of what led me to the church was I was like, I have to get something out here, but simultaneously this medical crap and alcohol, this isn't, I can't do this long run. It won't work. So I went in and I go in and I told them, I was like, hey, I want to join the church. Like let's do this. I want to become a member. Let's get this ball rolling. So they set up a time for me to meet with, ironically, Jerry, the deacon I ran into the first day I came walking up, didn't even know what I was doing. I came in one day and it was like Wednesday night. I met with him early ahead of their Wednesday night Bible study for probably about an hour to 2 hours, maybe. I met with him and or I met with him and one of the youth pastor. I met with them too, and we just had a conversation for about an hour, 2 hours. Told him my story, told him why I was there, and so we went through like the basic tenets, and I professed belief in all of them, and then he was like, okay, well, he's like, let's head on into the church and tell the pastor the pastor the good news, and I was like, oh, yeah, okay, okay. And, I got up and in my head as we're walking maybe the like 40 feet to the church, I was like, what good news? Like, what the hell is this guy talking about? I was like, what am I supposed to go in here and say? I was clueless. But we walk into the church and through a real shaky voice because I didn't know what I was supposed to say, as if the words came from somewhere. I walked in and I looked the pastor and all the church elders in the face, and I said something along the lines of, I believe that Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior. I believe he was born of a miracle. He was crucified, he died, and he rose again 3 days later. And something along the lines of like, and when I die, I will be reunited with him, such and such and such and such. And I said all those words. And again, it was the same disassociative feeling of when something told me to kill myself, but from the opposite direction. The words came from somewhere and I didn't know where because I don't even think I had cracked the Bible open at that point. It's not like I started coming to church service on Sundays and I went home and spent, all night reading the Bible. Like, I don't even think I cracked the Bible open. I don't even think I cracked the Bible open during service. I just sat there and listened. So I don't know where the words came from. It's not like I was Googling stuff. I wasn't at home like, oh, what am I supposed to say? What are you supposed to say? I don't know. I walked in and the words just came from somewhere and I said them. And, the pastor just said that, that's fantastic news. And he came up and gave me a big old giant hug, like a bear hug, which was strange at that point for me. I almost had like a yeah, he came up and gave me a big old hug uh uh and I kind of just let go a little bit at that point. Like I didn't fully let go. It's not like I melted in his arms like a love story or some crap, but I kind of let go for a moment and I felt really good. When I left the church after sitting there and talking to them for a little bit and then meeting with the pastor and the church elders and I talked to them, I walked out of the church and I got in the truck and it was the first time I had felt that good in a long time. Again, you could literally walk to the church from my house, so it was a short drive. I got home and subconsciously I was like, well, I don't know what the hell this is, but whatever it is, I want it to continue because I haven't felt this good in a long time. And, every Sunday I went back, it just got better and better and better. And like I said, I went in whole hog at the church, started signing up for every volunteering, taking food to, needy people that needed it. I just got into it, really into it. And it wasn't too long after that, so to fast forward a little bit, it wasn't too long after that that I actually retired. I made the decision to move back to Texas. So I get back to Texas and, I was looking for a church. I had no idea where I was gonna go. Didn't even know what a cowboy church was at that point. Never heard of it.
Mhm.
But I think I found Parker County Cowboy Church on Google Maps.
Probably so.
I think I found it on Google Maps somehow. Uh, but, I looked at the pictures. Uh, I looked at the pictures. I read what people had to say. I checked out the website. I went to the Facebook page, watched some of the videos, and it was the moment in Virginia Beach all over again. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna go there. I don't know why, but I'm gonna go there. And yeah, just one Sunday I just showed up, and the process was very similar. Like I walked up and, you know, how they got everybody out front, like the
The
greeters.
gauntlet, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So you walk up out front and you kind of get love bombed. It's just one after the other of just
Yeah,
big smiles, big hugs, handshakes, strong, stiff handshakes. Welcome, get on in here, you know, da 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 da. And then what about this? I just did I followed the same pattern that I followed in Virginia Beach, where I was like, well, I'm just gonna go whole hog. Like whatever they got going on here, I'm gonna get up in it, because whatever, you know, whatever this feeling is that I get, I just want it to continue, and I don't want to go back. And so that's just been the path I've been on ever since. And it's as they say, it's not a binary. It's not like one day you're not, one day you are. It's very much a process.
the journey, yeah.
Yeah, it's a journey for sure. And you know, the shitty part is with every journey, there's slips, trips, and falls. You know, and I've had a couple. I've had a couple since then. But in keeping with the good old cowboy church vernacular, I just got back on the saddle.
Got back on the horse.
Like I fell
Oh,
off, and I just got back on the saddle and was like, I'm just gonna,
yeah.
you know, I got to keep going.
I think that's a big thing, and that's one thing, about Parker County, especially, but just it is a journey, and man, nobody is gonna walk. The Bible talks about it being a narrow and rocky path. We're not gonna get there. It's not what we picture in our mind of,
Yeah.
oh, I'm gonna find this relationship with God. I'm gonna come to Jesus, and it's just gonna be unicorns and Skittles and
No,
rainbows.
in actuality, when you read up on it, it's the opposite.
It's the opposite, and you're
It's
gonna
the
have
opposite.
struggles, and I know.
Because I think the more you get into it,
Well,
the more you get into it, the how do they say it? The nearer you become to God, the more the devil attacks.
yeah, because he knows you. He
Yeah.
doesn't have to worry about, when you were.
When I was at my bottom, when I was drinking myself to sleep on medication and considering killing myself, he was like, "Oh, I got him.
Yeah,
I got him in the bag. I can
he was
move
like,
on to the next person."
well, he was like, hey, I like this guy. I
Yeah.
want to bring him to my team, so I'm
Yeah,
going
yeah,
to tell
yeah.
him to kill
So,
himself.
but
And
he
then,
but he was like, "I don't need to mess with that guy." He's like, "I can just nudge him in the right direction and he'll throw himself off the
okay,
roof.
yeah,
I can move on to the next person." But the further you turn around in the opposite direction, and the closer you get to God, the more they attack, and especially if you get like real close.
yeah, yeah. And you get
Uh,
attacked. You get, there's some days it's easy. It's nice. You're on a nice to go back to your.
it's all green pastures and
Well,
sunshine, and
there's that too. But to go back to your, you know, deployment days, you're on a nice, smooth, flat path, and you're just kind of strolling along. Then some days, he says, like your LT, we're going up over that mountain,
yeah,
and you're like, God, I don't want to go. I don't want to do it, God. And he's like,
I found that
Tommy, you're going over that damn mountain.
I found that since starting this path, like the first major obstacle I encountered was after I moved out to where I am now. You know, we started going around checking out churches out there, and at a certain point, you know, I arrived at the conclusion where I was like, you know what? Maybe I don't need to go. Maybe all I need to do is read my Bible, watch a Jordan Peterson podcast, you know, or something, and I'll be all right. And I think that was an attack, because if I don't go to church, then where the church that I ended up at now, you know, I get in there and I find out they got a food pantry. Okay. So there's a food pantry to help the community. I'm like, oh, okay. Here's my cell phone number. You call me whenever those shelves get low. You call me. I will go. I will go get whatever you need, and we'll bring it in here. If whatever you want to call him, the evil one, if he could have convinced me that it was like, you know what, hey man,
You're good.
you don't need to go. You could just sit out on your property, hide away from the world, occasionally open your Bible and read it like you know what the hell you're even reading anyways. No, you're good. You're good. You know what it is. You don't need anybody else. You don't need to go join a congregation or be a part of a community, because if you did that, you might help. You might help out, and you might bring someone else,
Well,
and we can't have that.
well, there's that
So
too. And then, what does the Bible say? That the devil's like a roaring lion on the prowl. And you think about how do lions hunt? They separate the sick and the weak. They don't attack the herd. They don't attack the strongest. They separate you out.
on the outer periphery,
They get the sick and the old and the weak, and that's how they hunt. And so and then also think of, as a veteran and especially a special operations guy, where where community was the core. We talk about it. People say, I want to, you may join the military for some lofty ideal. I want to serve my country, or even the lofty ideal of I want a better life than what I have here. But
Right.
once you especially get to combat, that shit all goes out the window. And you're like, I'm here for the guy to my left, and I'm here to the guy for my right, to my front and my back. And you don't fight for freedom or the oppressed or any of these great mottos that you
That
fight for your buddies.
that they make up in the Hollywood movies.
And they fight for you. And
you're there for that guy and that guy. Like,
And so veterans isolation really is the killer, because especially in your situation you talked about as you're getting ready to retire, that was isolation where you started really having those dark thoughts, and you knew that this part of my life is coming to an end. Now I got to decide what I'm going to do when I grow up. All my buddies, all these things, and you were going home to be by yourself. You had that, you lost, and even if they were checking in and saying, "Hey, Tom, are you okay?" It's different because you could go, when you're deployed or you're really in deep workup or post operation, you're really in with those guys. They're seeing you and they know, like your LT did. You thought, man, there's nothing wrong with me.
I didn't think anything was wrong with me, but apparently there was.
But they could see something like even if your performance was great, he's distracted. I don't need him distracted. I don't need somebody that
Has something else on his mind.
that gets out there and he's sitting on a mountaintop and that dark thought of, well, shit, I'm getting divorced or whatever. Something's going back on home. You're not 100% focused, and he could see that, or he knew that was a potential. Having been through as a leader, having been through combat with other guys, he knew that that was a potential. So he said, I'm going to send him home. But when you were in that retirement phase, you would go in and, play on your computer, do whatever you had to do for work, go to your different appointments. And so if nobody was seeing you, they were seeing, I don't know what y'all call, in the Army, we call warrant officers chief. I know in the Navy, they saw, they say, hey, there's chief over there. He's doing his job. He must be okay. And then you're going home every night and drinking, but you're showing up every morning. So they're like, and so there
Everything's all good.
So they're like, oh, he must be good. He's getting ready to retire and he's transitioning out. And so you lost part of it is you lost that tribe that really, and that's another thing, the devil tries to do to us is he says, man, you can watch Jordan Peterson, or you can watch Parker County on Facebook. So it's like the same as being there because you'll see all your friends and then you see
them
and then you watch it on Facebook or YouTube or whatever, and you see all your friends and you're like, man, I'm not there. And that starts to weigh on you. So, again, we really just to reiterate for folks that are having struggles in their life, there's not a pill, a bottle, anything else that's going to fix it. You gotta know that that's somewhat normal. We think it's abnormal because we have this Disney fairy tale princess view of life that if I find the right job, if I find the right significant other, if I live in the right house and I drive the right car, everything's going to be perfect. That ain't going to happen. And so when those don't happen, we think, well, there must be something wrong with me.
Well, and kind of what I'll end on is, I think a big part of it is, well, not think, I know a big part of it is when you're in the service and you're in the unit, you're needed. You have a function.
You have a mission.
You have a mission and you have a role, and you have to do your job or else something bad could happen. Like someone is relying upon you. And then if you retire, when you retire or whatever, veterans already have a really bad habit of isolating. And so you leave the unit and all of a sudden you're no longer required anymore. There's no one that needs you. There's no one that needs you in a very real sense. Okay. Like, okay, you could be married and you could have kids,
but it's not life or death. It is not, you're like, and it's your job.
Like, okay. Yeah. You need me to be a husband. You need me to be a dad.
Those are important. Those are very important.
Those are very important and arguably more important than the requirement to feel needed. But it's just not the same.
Most times, I will say this, most times as a parent or as a spouse, it really isn't life and death.
No,
like
very real.
Like I realized,
if it was, most veterans wouldn't have a problem.
I know I realized early on.
If I retired from the military and somebody was trying to murder my daughter, I'd be great. I'd be like, damn,
and I
body armor, lock and load. Let's go.
I realized very early on I realized it, but didn't translate it into action. I realized that I'm really good at staying calm in chaos. Like really good at it. Like,
Yeah,
bad stuff goes on
mostly
around me, and I can be like,
like a lot of guys get trained, especially the guys in soft or whatever. You get so good at it, it's almost like freakishly good at it.
yeah,
Where everyone's like in
and
panic
everything.
and
And I had a great mentor that was a
yeah,
special forces, Army Special Forces medic, Green Beret, 18 Delta, and so he instilled that in me as a very young PFC, and so I was good at that. But then when so I knew I was good in chaos. What it took me a while to figure out was I created chaos in my life so I could feel good, so I could
yeah.
feel like I had a mission, so I could feel like I was like, oh, there's bad things going on around me. I can be calm, I can get
And
through
if
it.
you if
And
and
then,
if
but you continually do that, and that takes a toll on yourself. That takes a toll on marriages and relations.
everyone around you.
And then you finally realize, like, okay, I still have that skill, but how about I try not to do things to create chaos? But if chaos comes, I got it.
Well,
But
it's also like if you know that that's your skill and that's an environment you thrive in, and then all of a sudden you're not in that environment anymore. Like I like I kept saying, you're Ricky Bobbying. You're standing there in civilian world. Like I thrive under chaos. I thrive under high stress environments. It's what I've been working in, and now I'm grocery shopping, and you're like, I don't know what to do with my hands. And it just that sense of listlessness and not being needed. That can hit really hard, and it did me. It's like as you like I said, as they transition you out of an operational role, and you kind of just set you over here so you could start retiring, and
don't touch anything sharp.
the
Don't break
minute
anything for the
the
next.
minute you're no longer needed, the minute you're no longer making any decisions that matter, and then all of a sudden you see the light at the end of the tunnel of your career, and and what makes it particularly brutal in where I was at was on your last day, they literally you go into the security office and you turn in your badge and they escort you to the gate and out you go,
Clink.
clink,
Let's find you.
and then you want to talk about a moment of finality, like the first time you drive off the compound and they literally don't like walk you to the gate and throw you out. You go into security, give them your badge, and they give you a temporary badge, and then you have to walk straight to the gate, and then you walk into the security office outside the gate and give them the temporary badge, and then you leave for the last time. And that drive is very unnerving. Like when you drive off the gate, when you drive off the compound for the last time, and you realize you can't turn around and go back on. That's a that's a that hurt a lot. And then you like when you wake up the next morning, and when you would normally get up the next morning, you're like, okay, normally I get up, I get coffee, I go to the gym, I work out, and then I'm in the unit or whatever. And you get up and you make coffee and you go, shit. That's where you end up seeing veterans like 6 months later. It's like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. He's still in a robe walking around the house in his house slippers, got a big old beard, long hair, looks like he hadn't showered in 2 weeks. Yeah, that happens. But anyways, man,
So Tom, yeah, let's.
we could keep beating a dead horse for
Yeah, we
hours.
could, but no, we've been at this for a while, and I really appreciate it because I think there's so much meat in this that it's important to talk about these things that we've talked about. And the other thing that I just want us to finish up with, I really want to thank you for your service, for what in not in a contrite way. That when
Yeah,
I say
yeah.
that, I mean it with like
Not in the Applebee's free
not yeah,
appetizer way.
not in the I'm going to send out a list of 20 restaurants that I can go get free food on Tuesday, and not on the but a
Uh,
truly because you can is things that we've talked about off camera, off just because we're friends, and you're saying that you get together. I know every Memorial Day you go back east, you go and you guys all get
the
together.
dates moved around a little bit, but now that we're kind of solidifying it, it's gonna be around the same time every year.
So you do a
We do a
reunion.
big annual reunion, and the biggest point of the reunion is for the young to beat the old, and the old to beat the young.
And I'll tell you that
Which
that's
which I keep getting older, and
they keep
they
getting
keep
younger.
staying the same age. It's
Uh,
weird.
yeah. That's one other thing that Rowdy's, the granddaddy said, if you have a chance, I never have. I just guess I wasn't in those kind of units, but if you have a chance to do a reunion with, for those that have served, if you have a chance to do a reunion with, whether it's, a SEAL team or special forces team or some of those guys that were in Vietnam and served, they served as a unit, go to those. One, it's good for your soul just because you can share those are guys and ladies you can share your struggles with because they walked in the same shoes. They've been in the same boots. You can share your struggles with them where you maybe can't share it with your kids or your family, your significant other, your husband, wife, whatever. You can't share it at the same level. But those guys were those people were there. And if they weren't there with like what you're doing with the Naval Special Warfare guys, they weren't there, but they still walked they still ate the same dust. They still wallowed in the same mud. So you might have not been there.
They still went through Ali Salim Air Base.
They still went through the crucible of pre-deployment. The Jocko Willing. I'm sure that curriculum is been updated. Is still very similar. It probably just sucks more.
Yeah, I mean, because it never gets easier. They'll just keep adding stuff to it. It'll just keep getting tougher and tougher.
So
and tougher.
You have those stories that you can instantly. That's one of the things. I'm gonna rabbit trail here for just a second. That's one of the things why I feel, and people have different thoughts on the quality of care that the VA provides. I've had good care and I've had bad care there. That's not the point. But the thing that is special about the VA is when you go to that VA clinic, I have a hat that I didn't wear today, but typically everybody's got a Army or whatever.
And then the veteran hat,
the uniform, right?
Yeah.
But you can go in and there's still a few World War II vets around now. Now it's Korea, mostly Vietnam vets, and then vets of our generation. And you just have that, you can just be sitting in the waiting room and talk to somebody. Like I was walking out this morning. I had a chiropractor's appointment this morning before we did this. I was walking out of the Fort Worth outpatient clinic, and there was two probably Vietnam vets, and I don't think they knew each other from Adam. And the one old guy walking by the other one, he looked at the guy and he said, "Thank you for your service." And they stopped and, then they had a conversation of, and I didn't stay to eavesdrop.
Like, where were you?
Where were you? What'd you do?
Yeah.
And it was that's just so unique that I will take all the red tape and the BS that comes with dealing with the VA healthcare system. Transparency, I worked for the VA for 13 years, but I'll take that because you don't get that when you go to Scott and White. Very rarely, because the guy's not coming into Scott and White wearing his Army hat or his Navy hat. He's just showing up to Scott and White, so you don't know who's sitting next to you. And typically, unless you're just an extrovert, you're not just going to sit down next to somebody at the doctor's office or hospital and be like, "Hey, what are you in here for?"
These days, somebody would probably call the cops on you if you did that, because society's become so
isolated.
Yeah, it did. Where like if you sat down, these days if you go to the airport and sit down at the terminal and you're not on your phone, like you're the weirdo. God help you, you initiate a conversation with a stranger. Jesus Christ.
Stranger danger.
Yeah, they call the cops and be like, "Oh."
So anyway, I appreciate your service. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
We may not have stepped on the exact same ground in Fallujah, but we were damn close.
We ate some of the same dust, just at different times.
Yeah. The same moon dust that gets in everything. Yeah. Fantastic.
But I really appreciate it. I appreciate the time that you were able to give us today. Thanks so much.
You're welcome, dude.
All right. Well, that's it, guys. I want to just thank everybody that is going to watch this. We'd like to thank Rowdy Decker for letting us use his song Blue Collar for our intro and extra. As our technical advisor, Kellyanne Cardwell from Cardwell Creative. Appreciate her being here to help us and do all the post-production. And if you're looking for somebody, you can find her on the interwebs. She does social media and internet consulting for marketing. So I appreciate you guys, and tell everybody that's a veteran that watched this. I know it's a couple days late, but happy Veterans Day, and we thank you.
Zip ties, duct tape, and